Well, good afternoon, and sorry I'm a little bit late. Let's go ahead and call the meeting back to order. We do see a quorum. I believe first on the agenda we have the Department of Transportation. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Chairman Thompson, members of the committee, thank you for having us here today. My name is Mike Smith, the Commissioner of the Indiana Department of Transportation. And with me is the Chief Financial Officer of the organization, Joe Gustin. Start by talking about just some things that our agency has going on and what we're looking forward to, a little bit of what we've accomplished, and then let Joe get into some of the financial numbers. Agency has 5 goals. Enhanced core service delivery is really about us being excellent at running the basics. So as you can see with the data that we have produced in our pavement and bridge conditions, along with what we do every other day, running the basic play is a big deal for us at the agency. Plan for the future with the bipartisan infrastructure law and other things going on, making sure that as much as we're using our financial resources and tax dollars in a good way, that we're taking care of our natural resources, that we're providing equitable opportunities for folks and a resilient network to deal with the demands of today's interests. As well, we're looking at other modes of transportation. We are a Department of Transportation, not just a highway department. And so focused on making sure that we are providing solutions for bike ped facilities, rail opportunities, supporting our aviation, amongst others. Enhanced internal services is another one that we're really focused on. Been hard at work in partnering with our legislative partners, but all of our coalitions, our industry partners, to ensure that we're, quite frankly, stealing shamelessly best practices from across the nation, but also so that we're able to leverage our stakeholders to make us successful as possible. I'm sorry, that was intentional partnerships. Enhance internal services is really our effort on continuous improvement. Things like Riverlink, we get better every day. Senator Garden. But amongst other things, just to make sure that we, again, are saving taxpayer dollars and are becoming more efficient in how we deliver. The last one, but certainly not least, the newest one, is our focus on safety, a goal by the agency to reduce severe accidents and fatalities by 25% over the next 10 years. I'm happy to report that through our efforts, we are on track to have a reduction of 90 fatalities on Indiana's roadways this year. About half of those on INDOT's network and about half of them on the local network. We're not celebrating. We know that one's too many, but a good amount of progress on that goal. I just want to highlight through your continued partnership and our investment in the state's infrastructure, Indiana continues to be in the top 10 of infrastructure rankings amongst the 50 states. We have been in the top 10 for the past 8 years, several times at number 1. A ranking that we're very proud of, and we know is not one that we do alone. A little bit about INDOT. At a glance, 6 district offices, many of those folks on the ground in those district facilities, field facilities, work very closely with you all, the folks in your towns and communities across Indiana to deliver. INDOT has just about 3,625 employees at current time. And just to highlight that our budget has basically doubled since 2017 on about the same number of headcounts. So we're really making sure that we're trying to be good stewards of the dollars with our employees as well. For 2024, just shy of $4 billion in obligations, $2.23 billion in state infrastructure investment on our network, about $934 million worth of local infrastructure improvement across the local network, and about a $634 million operating budget, which is where we do a lot of our maintenance level activities, snow plowing and pothole filling, and the basic road maintenance that is not construction related. Speaking of maintenance and preservation, the agency over the last several years has invested a lot of money, thanks to you all, approximately $14.57 billion from 2018 to 24 into our road network with a heavy focus on maintenance and preservation of the network that we already have. We've resurfaced more than 18,000 lane miles, representing about 50% of NDOT's total fleet. And we've replaced or repaired 4,500 bridges, which is about 79% of NDOT's fleet. So as you can see, we have been busy operating and maintaining our network since you have entrusted us with the resources to do so. As of our most recent ratings, pavement conditions at fair or better are 94.3% and bridges at 97.1%. I would highlight almost a 4.5% gain in, or 5.5% gain in pavement conditions since 2017 when we started our asset management program. Yeah, back one. Thank you. In terms of capital program investment over the last 2 years of the biennium, state projects have totaled $5.47 billion worth of investment. On the local network, $1.4 billion worth of local replace, repair, and build bridges and roadways on the local network. We've chip sealed nearly 2,000 lane miles of roadway, crack sealed 8,000 miles of roadway, applied nearly 39,000 miles of centerline and edge stripe painting, replaced 43,000 signs, and serviced over 4.6 million highway miles during winter operations. The agency has been busy. A little bit about major projects that the agency has been up to. Of course, we rehabilitated the second busiest interchange in the state with the North Split over the last couple of years. I'm happy to report that the I-69 finish line project will be wrapping up in terms of permanent configuration later this week. Sherman-Minton, down on the Ohio River, is close to its final on-road completion. We look to continue work with projects like the Lloyd for You in Evansville, the Clear Path project on the northeast side of 465, and the upcoming I-65 Safety and Efficiency Project on the south side of Marion County. We have completed the double track of the South Shore Project, the largest commuter rail project in the history of the state, and we look forward to the opening of the new Westlake Corridor on NICTE next year. Additionally, we continue to invest upfront in research and planning for the future of corridors like US 30 and 31 with the Pell studies up there, as well as a intensive look at the downtown infrastructure in Indianapolis inside the 465 loop, and the upcoming review of Tier 2 of the Mid-States corridor in the Jasper-Huntingburg area. Additionally, just a note about community crossings. So since 2016, $1.83 billion worth of investment of state funds in awards to local communities. This last year, 2024, almost $350 million worth of investment in 475 separate communities for 4,578 road and bridge projects. We did, notably this year, raise our cap to $1.5 million for each community this year. With that, I'll hand it off to Joe, our CFO, to talk about our financial picture.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to first just give a very high-level picture of our 2024 financials. We had a total obligation in this last fiscal year of $3.838 billion. We're a dedicated funding agency. We receive approximately 60% of our total revenue from prompt state highway revenue and about 40% of that from federal aid. In fiscal 24, our actual state highway revenue came in at about 1.37, 1.75% below our fiscal forecast, but that was well within our plus or minus 2.5% forecasting accuracy. We take a very conservative approach to releasing revenue for obligation by holding back 3% of our forecasted revenue at the beginning of each fiscal year in the event that there are negative forecasting variances. And then we'll release that revenue as we approach Q4 of the fiscal year if the actual revenue is coming in line with our forecast. The NDOT and local capital programs combined totaled $2.9 million, and that represented 76.4% of our total 24 obligations. So although we received an unusually large, and I would add historic, amount of federal August redistribution, our capital program obligations were below forecast in 24. We had one very large contract that could not be awarded in 24, so we moved that to fiscal 25, and that contract let on July the 10th. State planning and research obligations were higher than the prior year by around $10 million. And again, that large August redistribution helped us divert some extra funding to that program. Our maintenance work program in 24 was around $15 million higher than the prior year amount as we began to allocate more funding to early stage pavement preservation treatments, which in the long run will reduce the amount of capital that we have to spend on restoration. Multimodal obligations were unusually high as well in 24, due exclusively to a $24 million one-time supplemental funding, and that was distributed to 4 airports around the state. So throughout the fiscal year in 24, we maintained our financial stability through conservative funds management, and we maintained compliance with state and federal regulatories. So if I could turn to fiscal 25. Now this is in the context of the 25 baseline target that was provided. So just let me start by saying that NDOT total funding availability has 3 components: prompt state highway revenue, federal aid, and transfers from various funding balances. So we follow a very well-established order of priority when we allocate funding. First, we pay our debt service, then we pay obligations, and then funding that remains goes to our capital program, where in that program, preservation takes precedence over new construction. So that stated, any fluctuations in the awarding of contracts or funding throughout the year directly impacts our capital program. I'll give you some examples. As I mentioned earlier, that one very large contract that did not let in 24, we moved to 25, and that was let on July the 10th. Our share of the 25 federal August redistribution was $151 million lower than it was in fiscal 24. And then the percent of federal contracting authority available for obligation decreased in 25, and that resulted in a reduction of around $80 million in federal obligating limitation. So these types of variations could occur also in 26 and 27, the upcoming biennium. We're resilient. We have the flexibility and the discipline to manage those types of fluctuations accordingly. It's just our standard operating procedure. I mentioned that Federal Highway is currently operating under a continuing resolution, and that provides funding through December 20th of this year, 4 more days. So on December 21st, we could either have another continuing resolution, or Congress could appropriate the full amount for the remainder of the federal fiscal year, which ends September 30th. Either way, at this point, we don't know exactly what the funding from the Federal Highway is going to be after December 20th. Also, I would note that during this upcoming biennium, the current Federal Reauthorization Act expires, so there will be a new one beginning in in October 26th. So we're going to be watching that very closely to see how that transpires with the new administration. So the bottom line, our capital program, which is the primary driver of our biennium budget, is completely independent of the state's general fund, and it fluctuates throughout the year based on funding, revenue funding from state highway and federal aid. So through the budget bill, as augmentation provisions, and with SBA's approval, we use the state highway fund to manage some of these variations to support the delivery of our program. And also the budget bill accommodates the variability of our federal aid by providing that any changes, any increases in federal is continually appropriated. Now the local program in 25, at least in the 25 baseline, is a pass-through through MDOT, and it's supported by three main sources of revenue. It's the locals' federal share, the locals' match for that federal, and then community crossings. So 24 provided some unique impacts to the program, an unusually large federal August redistribution of $76 million, but that in 25 dropped to $26 million. That was a $50 million decrease to the locals as well as it was to us because of the August redistribution. So for the biennium coming up, we're forecasting conservatively, and we think those August redistributions will continue along the same path as they did this fiscal year. In 24, community crossings program awarded $347 million, which was $125 million higher than each of the awards in the prior 2 years. So if you recall, there are three sources of funding for community crossings. There's gasoline use tax, there's the $15 registration fee for transportation infrastructure improvement, and then there's the supplemental registrations for electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. So for 26 and 27, we expect the community crossings revenue to remain relatively flat for a couple of reasons. EV and hybrid registration revenue, we think, is going to increase somewhere between 29 and 30% per year. So that's an increase. But we're also seeing and forecasting a decrease in gasoline use tax because pump prices, we think, are going to come down and consumption is going to be lower. And then in fiscal 26 and 27, we're forecasting the local share of federal revenue to mimic what we're currently seeing in 25. And the community crossings program, as I mentioned, will be roughly on par with where it is this fiscal year. Next, in the biennium, multimodal obligations are expected to fall back to that normal $110 million per year level. So we'll continue to use federal funds for our state planning and research program to the extent that Federal Highway allows us to do that, and that allows us to preserve some of our state funds for other uses. And then regarding debt service, the highway bond amortization schedule is set, and we see no increases in the biennium over what we're currently spending this fiscal year for debt service. So if I could then focus on the operational portion of the upcoming budget. Labor and benefits, that statewide compensation adjustment has continued to help us maintain a low turnover rate. We're currently at 5.3%, which is pretty good, I think. We've assumed normal winter operations for forecasting overtime expenses and any cost of living increases or increases in pay performance that would occur in the biennium, if approved, can and will be funded through our state highway fund balance. We expect to continue implementing our maintenance work program by roughly $20 to $25 million per year over the pre-24 levels. And all of that would go to, as I mentioned, pavement preventive maintenance and low-cost, quick delivery safety treatments. Highway maintenance and vehicle equipment budget, we anticipate only modest inflationary increases, and that combined with our fleet management will hold those expenses in the next biennium to manageable levels. And then we're also forecasting only modest inflationary increases for our 0.2 through 0.9 budget supplies and expenses. We expect fuel costs to moderate this coming biennium, and we're forecasting our diesel fuel expenses that we use for snow removal based on just a normal winter. So I'll close by saying that as we progress through this biennium and into the actual 26-27 period, we'll continue our long-standing practice of remaining fiscally constrained by delivering a program that matches exactly what we have and no more. So, Commissioner, I'll turn that back to you.
Thank you. I'll wrap with just talking about a few pieces of information relative to what the nation is facing in terms of the future of transportation funding. About 84% of our state funds are tied directly to gasoline consumption in the state, an issue that most state transportation agencies and locals face and that their distributions are tied to. Some would say that we are facing a fiscal cliff relative to the future of the gas tax, and so we wanted to highlight a few of those issues here today. Obviously, for most things in life, costs have gone up. Certainly, transportation funding is one of those. At the height of the pandemic, a 43% increase in the cost of commodities that has moderated itself, as Joe has mentioned, but certainly prices have not gone back to the levels that we had forecast back when we did legislation and funding back in 2017. So we do need to address our ability for buying power. Additionally, a couple of, a couple of issues relative to the future of funding with fuel sourcing. You look at EV adoption and hybrid adoption, that will be a headwind in the future. Certainly what I would say sitting here today is no one can predict exactly how quickly those vehicles will be adopted at scale. So I'm not here saying that any of our math or anyone's math is foolproof on that issue, but it certainly is something that we're going to have to reckon with being more a part of the fleet as we move forward. But more significantly is the CAFE standards that have been implemented at the federal level. That is having a real impact to our revenues every year right now. As we talk about just cars that are coming off the line being 5, 6, 7 miles an hour more fuel efficient than their predecessors. So with that, thank you for having us, and we will entertain any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the gentleman? Representative Delaney.
Yes, thank you. I just had a couple of questions about traffic safety. Just driving the highways, you get the impression that speeding is more common. Even high-speed speeding seems to be more common than it used to be. I think that kind of started during the COVID period when the roads were pretty empty. Is that having any impact on our fatalities on the highways?
Yeah, I think so. I'd point at really two things that we're doing about it. We have implemented the camera work zone speed enforcement that you all gave us the authority to implement. That's having the real-world impact of 3 to 4 miles an hour of speed reduction. Top end, 6, 7, 8 miles an hour of speed on the top end of speeders that we're seeing out there. I would say additionally, we've identified our worst 50 performing corridors on the network where we're having fatalities, and we've partnered with our state police partners and their local law enforcement counterparts to do more enforcement and addressing those specific areas of concern, but we're working very hard on both of those efforts to implement changes.
Would you expect a benefit if we extended that beyond the work zones to just more generally put in the speed cameras and coordinate with the state police? Could that help us with this fatality issue?
Yeah, I think so. I would say that I would like to hold the agency accountable and making sure that we're successfully implementing it before we ask for broader change. But things like implementing in school zones, things like more broad use across the state would have undeniable impact. We see a 25% reduction in fatalities with our neighboring state, well, our counterpart states who have implemented the program and fatality reduction.
That's just in the work zones, right?
That's mostly where they're implementing them now,
That's a tremendous improvement.
for sure.
Yeah, so you divide the speeders into speeders and high-end speeders, is that what you do?
Well, it's my effort to
thank
really
you.
deal with our most aggressive violators, for sure.
And I assume-
We've had state police partners posting pics of people going 3-digit miles an hour in work zones.
I heard there was a work zone in Indianapolis where somebody was caught doing over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. We did a test when we first implemented the program on the northeast side of 465. 25,000 vehicles measured, 15 to 16,000 of them in violation of the 11 miles an hour of speed or over in that zone. One in that particular test as well was going 3-digit miles an hour speed, and 2 cars drag racing through the zone. So this is having a real world impact in making not only our workers safer, because people are concerned about that. I am concerned
Yeah.
about that. We are. But by far the biggest impact is on the traveling public with that.
Yeah, so the indirect, desirable but not the purpose of this program is to help the broad population, not just the workers who are there, but everybody who happens to be passing by
Yeah.
is safer
Absolutely.
because of this program. Those statistics you just gave are pretty compelling.
Sure.
You're using 11 miles over a speed limit or less is not considered to be a problem under this analysis. And still, what percentage did you get who were doing 11 miles or more over?
Like 60, 65% from our initial test. By the way, compliance in the pilot that we've done is we only have about 1 to 2% of violators of that. So it is having a real world impact.
I tell you, you're putting signage warning people that this program is enforced there.
Yeah, it's
I'm all
it's in
for
the-
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the statute. We have a very structured process, but signing is part of the package.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Senator Kador?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your service. I have one quick question. In the first committee, the FIR-SST committee, you did a presentation, and many others, including the LTAP at Purdue University. They indicated that if we are to take care of the worst roads in Indiana, maintain the existing roads at fair or good condition, then the joint total dollar figure that is needed over the next decade is $2.4 billion. With the concern of declining gasoline use tax, what are your thoughts from a budget perspective for next session? I know that we're the policymakers, but it seems that the cost of maintaining capital, deferred capital, becomes much more expensive than preventative work. A dollar that is spent today might cost us $5 or $6 or $7, if not more, in the future. Any thoughtful, big picture recommendations on, do we need to do something next session, 2025 session, to come up with bold ideas to expand the revenue pie for infrastructure funding?
Yeah, I wouldn't presuppose a solution, but I would say it's undeniable that there are needs out there. I guess that, like any Christmas list, there are things that you have to have and there are things that you want to have. And I think we need to collectively talk about in this state what those things are. We have kind of exhaustively reviewed potential revenue possibilities. You talk to my peers and the ongoing conversation in the United States. There are a couple of options that are being leaned on. You look at freight package deliveries, whether it's Uber Eats delivering your meal to you tonight or Amazon coming to your house 6 times a day. Really, with the user pays philosophy that I've heard from this assembly, it would be an effort for us to capture some of those additional trips that have become much more part of the culture here in the last several years. I think a lot of states are looking at tolling. So that's one that has been implemented across numerous states across the union. And then kind of the newest one, road user charge, is another one that folks are looking at really with that user pays methodology. We looked at all kinds of other things. Really, road user charge and tolling are the most ubiquitous, along with that shipping charge. But we looked at a dedication of a part of the sales tax, different other portions of tax to fuel revenues. I wouldn't presuppose what's right. That's up to you all to decide. But we did provide that report in an exhaustive way with the first task force.
I appreciate you for your thoughtfulness. I think we have a meeting this Wednesday, and we can take these discussions a little bit more in detail. But one of the frequent feedbacks that I receive from my constituents as the adoption of EVs continues to grow, as recent as last night, I got a call from a constituent who said, if you charge gasoline for use tax, then you're charging the source of energy to fuel a vehicle. But when it comes to EVs, you're not charging the electricity that is fueling the vehicles, but you're charging the registration fees, and that's not fair. So if you are consistent in charging the energy sources that fuel our vehicles, then that we need to be consistent and not double or triple the registration fees for cars based on, but I know we have nuances if it's a truck, if it's 2 axles, 4 axles, all of that. But I appreciate your service and your team. I look forward to working with my colleagues on the first committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I believe next on the agenda, we'll have Department of Corrections. Welcome. Whenever you're ready, take your time. The floor is yours.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. All right. Chairman Thompson, thank you. Members of the committee, here today to talk about the Indiana Department of Correction. I'm really excited actually about today's presentation. There have been a lot of efforts over the last 2 years, and excited to walk you through some of the changes and where we're headed as an agency. I am the commissioner for the Indiana Department of Correction, Christina Riegel, and I have with me Chief of Staff Elliot Anderson. One of the things that I actually love about the Indiana Department of Correction is that the mission and vision of our agency goes back to when we were established in the Indiana Constitution. Article 1, Section 18 reads, "The penal code shall be founded on the principles of reformation and not vindictive justice." That in itself sets us up for the mission and vision of preparing individuals to reenter society successfully. In addition to the overall agency mission and vision, we did focus on a 2024 vision for the agency. They were called the Commissioner's 4 Keys, and those were be present, do the basics best, strengthen our team, and innovate with inspiration. That was the groundwork for everything that we did in 2024, and a lot of what you'll hear me talk about today will ring true to those 4 keys to success. Over the last 2 years, I've worked really hard to restructure our agency management and define clear roles and responsibilities. The top level of our agency management is the Deputy Commissioner team that's comprised of the 4 Deputy Commissioners and our Chief of Staff. We meet weekly, and this team is charged with being visionaries and making key strategic decisions that impact the entire agency. Deputy Commissioner of Operations James Basinger has oversight of all adult facility operations, our field operations, which is our parole division, jail services, emergency response, and our Office of Investigations and Intelligence. He also oversees our industries division and our classification division that includes sentence computation and release and movement. Deputy Commissioner of Reentry and Youth Services is Christine Blessinger. She oversees juvenile facility operations and juvenile external services. She also oversees our programs and reentry division, which includes the higher team, which is Hoosier Initiative for Reentry, our both education for adult and juveniles, including adult basic education and vocational education, our case management team, and our incarcerated individual employment development. DC Blessinger also oversees our religious services and community engagement team, who has responsibilities to provide oversight to over 2,000 active volunteers throughout our agency, and our community corrections division. Next is our Deputy Commissioner of Strategic Alignment, Annie Geller. She oversees our data science and analytics team, our technology services, which is our application technology, facility technology, and incarcerated individual technology, our communications team, our legislative services, our construction services, and DC Geller also oversees project management and the new facility transition. Chief of Staff Elliot Anderson is responsible for our organizational strategy and workforce administration. He also provides oversight to our policy and accreditation team, our health services team, which is a physical, behavioral, and transitional health, our fiscal services team, and our legal services comprising of contracts, compliance, registration, and victim services. Deputy Commissioner Erica Parrish is over our diversity and development and is responsible for workforce development and strategic equity. She oversees our workforce engagement team, which does our new employee training, our annual in-service, our leadership development, our correctional retention specialist team, and our succession planning efforts. She also oversees our strategic equity team, comprised of staff wellness, ADA compliance, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our Veterans Affairs team. I continue to develop our teams down the chain, and starting with our senior leadership team. So this is a team of 20 staff who report directly to the Deputy Commissioner team. Many have several large areas of responsibility, and their role is to develop plans to execute the vision of that Deputy Commissioner team. They meet monthly to discuss goals, priorities, and they work as a team, a cross-functional team, to solve agency problems. Then we have our executive team that's made up of 36 staff who report to our senior leadership team. Their role is to execute the plans developed by the senior leadership team, and these staff generally have one area of responsibility, but then they collaborate with others to accomplish those goals. Our next leadership team is our wardens. This is a team of 18 staff who are appointed by me, but we do include the 2 GEO wardens in our group of wardens. They provide overall management of their facilities, and they meet monthly at rotating sites with our Deputy Commissioner team, so they can learn from each other and how each facility is operating and some of the challenges that they have. And then every 3 months, we meet in central office and bring in that senior leadership team as well. And then the last group of our agency leadership teams is our parole district supervisors. There's 10 parole district supervisors who manage all aspects of their districts, including maintaining relationships with prison personnel, federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies and courts, and community-based providers. And this team meets with our Deputy Commissioner team quarterly. All right, our next slide shows where we're at across the state. We have 21 facilities and 10 parole districts. The map on the left is our adult facility maps. We have 18 adult facilities. There's 15 male, comprising of 4 maximum security, 1 of which is intake, 8 medium security, 3 minimum security, 2 of which are community reentry centers. We have 3 female facilities. 2 are medium, 1 of which is our intake facility for women, and 1 which has a work release, and then our maximum security women's prison in Indianapolis. The middle map is of our juvenile facilities. We have 1 female juvenile facility and 2 male juvenile facilities. And then on the right is our parole district map. Again, we have 10 parole districts. They oversee 5,650 active adults on parole, over 1,100 on lifetime parole, and 43 juveniles on parole. I've provided the last 9 years of our population trend here. You'll see at the beginning there's a dip in 2015 and 2016. That's a result of House Enrolled Act 1006 in 2014. We started a slow, steady increase following that dip until COVID hit in 2019, and then clearly saw a massive decline in our population. In 2021, post-COVID, we expected to see us return to the slow, steady increase that we were experiencing before COVID, but we really remained pretty flat until this past year. You'll see over the past year, we've seen a pretty significant increase in our population, and this is something that we're monitoring very closely. We made some pretty significant decisions based on our population being steady. So we have increased the number of times we do our population projections. In the past, we did those once a year. We're doing those every 6 months. We're starting to look closer and add abstract data. And then we're also noticing a few contributing factors for our population trends. Serious mental health needs are certainly a big piece of managing our population. Statistical information shows us that 95% of our population has mental health needs. In the past, we always relied on an 80%. Our latest study shows 95% have a mental health need. That can range from routine services with little functional impairment to those who require frequent intervention because they haven't stabilized. About 30% of that mental health population is some of the most intense mental health issues. More than 30% of the facility FTEs in our comprehensive health care contract are dedicated to mental health. We've also seen an increase in our classification of maximum and close supervision. This isn't something new to you. You've heard about our need for maximum security space. In July of 2020, we had 36% of our classification, or 36% of our population, was classified as a level 3-4, and 32% were sentenced to 20+ years. That grew in 2022 and again in 2024. In 2024, 42% of our population is classified as 3-4s, and 36% is sentenced to 20+ years. In addition to the classification being higher, we're hearing a lot from our wardens that even those who are classified as lower security are having more behavioral issues and are harder to manage. A lot of times we'll say a level 2 incarcerated individual today is not the same as a level 2 incarcerated individual even 5 years ago. I think this is probably likely due to the increase in crimes against person as the most serious offense for sentences. In July of 2020, 30% of our population had crimes against person as the most serious offense. In 24, that's grown to 37% of our population. The last piece is just aging and physical health. Since 2004, the average age of the incarcerated population has increased from 34.6 years to 41.1 years old. And the percentage of the incarcerated population that has the sentence length greater, again, has moved up to 38.64%. So the longer they stay, the more that's going to drive up our average age, which obviously creates more age-related medical needs, hospital trips, and chronic care conditions. Our Community Corrections Division awards $72.5 million in grants to over 200 grant-funded entities in 89 counties statewide. When preparing for this, we looked at the population served by those community corrections grants, and I knew that it had declined, but I don't think that I had my finger on it how much it had declined. So in 2018 and 2019, there were around 18,000 served by community corrections. That dropped in '22 to just 10,000. And over the last 2 years, it's been around 11,800. So we've seen a pretty significant decline in those being served by community corrections, which probably shouldn't have been too surprising to me because our population is increasing and jail population is increasing, and that's a direct correlation. We'll say over the last year, we worked with several key stakeholders to develop a plan to update the grant funding formula. It hadn't been updated in the last 15 years. We had representatives from the Department of Correction, the State Budget Agency, IACAC, and Popeye, who worked to develop the new funding formula, and that's ready to go through the rulemaking process. At the same time, we've also identified and piloted performance measures, and we've provided technical assistance and held CQI meetings with the locals with the goal to work towards incorporating performance measures into the formula at a future state. If you've ever had a conversation with me, you can be sure that staffing was a part of it. Today is no exception. You will hear a lot about our staffing today. We're going to go into some greater detail when we talk about our challenges and opportunities, but I did want to provide you with some historical data surrounding our staffing overall. So our total position count has actually been stable throughout the entire current administration. We haven't had any growth in available positions. Staffing pre-COVID, we averaged around 5,800 to 6,000 DOC staff. You'll see a pretty significant decline around COVID, and that continued to decline. We actually bottomed out in October 2022, which was around the time of my appointment as commissioner, and I promise that it's not related to me. We were at approximately 5,100 staff. This was at the same time that our budget for last biennium was being developed. So our budget for the biennium was developed with our staffing around 5,100. And that's the budget session that included increases for the compensation study and other shared services that are dependent on positions being filled. Since October 2022, we've been able to build back to over 5,700 staff. And as of November 2024, we have a positive churn rate for this year of 449. So we've grown 449 staff since January of 2024. 364 of those have been since August of 2024. We'll talk a little bit later about the efforts to get there and what contributed to that. Our facility vacancy rates have also been a high pressure item that we've kept tabs on. In 2022 and to 2023, several of our facilities had vacancy rates that exceeded 30% vacancy. Some even exceeded 40%. We had Miami Correctional Facility at 50% vacancy. Correctional Industrial Facility was over 40% vacancy. Pendleton Correctional Facility and Putnamville were right around 38% vacancy. Pendleton Juvenile also right around that same percentage, and the state prison was at 34%. This was really a systemic issue. Now it's moved to a local one. We'll go in, again, great detail on some of the efforts that we've done to help address this. But I do want to share that our overall vacancy rate is now at 17%. In October of 2022, it was at 27% overall. So we've made significant progress on our overall vacancy. Our three facilities where we kind of have that localized pressure now is the Putnamville Correctional Facility. They're still at a 38% custody vacancy rate. Miami Correctional Facility has made a lot of progress, but they're still at a 38% custody vacancy rate. And Westville Correctional is at 29.4% custody vacancy rate. But again, having those three facilities right around a 30% mark, especially in their overall rate versus where we were at a couple of years ago, I'm definitely really proud of the progress that we've done. Every other facility that we have is under 20% overall. And Pendleton Juvenile, which I mentioned, was at 36. There's actually now under 10% vacancy. Please.
We, just this last 2 weeks, we've been doing we do annual or quarterly culture assessments. And so we have annual report outs on the success of the quarters and the initiatives that the facilities have adopted. And it was really exciting to hear actually that just with the exception of Miami and Putnamville, we're moving off of mandatory overtime. And some of the mandatory overtime, they're even talking about those facilities backing off of. We're doing some sort of attendance-based incentive to have people be able to select off of mandatory overtime if they're able to serve all of their shifts in a given month. So those are conversations that just didn't exist in our agency 2 years ago, and it's been really exciting to see.
Okay, we'll jump into some of our challenges and opportunities. Being commissioner of the Department of Correction it's a heavy job. And there are a lot of things that weigh on my mind, but the three that tend to make me lose sleep at night are the agency staffing, our intake and capacity, and then mental health, addiction recovery, and difficult placements. So we'll continue talking about the agency staffing. I mentioned before this was really a nationwide crisis back in '22. We were not alone. As a matter of fact, we were out on the Hill with a consortium with BJA and the Correctional Leaders Association. They actually included participation by labor unions and justice involved and advocacy groups at the table with us trying to figure out a solution to the staffing crisis in corrections. I think that just really speaks to how big of an issue it was and quite honestly, the lengths that leaders like me were willing to go to try and solve what we were experiencing.
And the impact that basic security operations have on our ability to do things like programming and education. Without the core operational responsibilities being cared for, then we can't do some of the evolution to make sure people have successful reentry.
Mm-hmm. So we made a decision. We came back and we just said, we keep talking about staffing, we keep talking about vacancies, it matters or it doesn't. So we're going to be committed to making this an every single day conversation, and it's going to be all hands on deck, regardless of whether your area has issues with vacancies or not. We undertook several recruitment retention initiatives over the biennium. We appointed hiring champions at facilities whose sole job was to look at applications coming in. They were trained on interviewing skills and moving applications through. The job market was very competitive, and if you didn't reach out to someone immediately, they were moving on to the next thing before we even reached out with them. We entered an MOU with the State Personnel Department for a talent acquisition specialist who works with our high-need facilities directly and creates plans to address the needs of those facilities specific to them. We also redid our correctional officer applications, made sure that the wording on those weren't kind of scaring people away from the position while still helping them understand what they were getting into. We increased our mental health and wellness resources. I'll talk a little bit later about why that's important in the corrections environment. And probably the thing that had the most significant impact, I'm actually going to ask Chief of Staff Anderson to discuss. In August, we initiated a retention-based compensation initiative that really was born out of his experience his first week on the job.
Yeah, so my first day was at Pendleton, and I met the commissioner there in the morning. We stayed there for about 9 hours. And then my third day was at Edinburgh, and same schedule. And we got back to the office, I think maybe a day or two after, and we were talking through just my experience having not come from corrections until I started the agency in January of 2023. And one of my first questions was, so how do we acknowledge the fact that working G Cell House at Pendleton is different than going and changing the floors at Gainbridge out of Edinburgh? And the answer that I got from everyone that I asked, including her, was that we don't. We have all of those positions compensated the same, we treat them all the same, and we don't acknowledge maybe the reality of the day-to-day danger that our staff are facing depending on where they're posted. Which has obviously a significant impact on their retention. And so one of the things that we set out to do in partnership with the State Personnel Department and State Budget Agency, who are wonderful partners to our agency through this process, which is really about a 2-year process, was evaluating how we can start to meet people better where they are, especially those that are working at the more dangerous facilities with individuals who are classified higher. We had, not long after the commissioner was appointed, murder at the state prison, and that really drove home the point of what it is that we needed to try to do to ensure that our staffing rates were higher and that we were, again, acknowledging the reality of the day-to-day job that our folks are doing for us, because it really is tremendous. So in order to acknowledge that, we were able to bring about the retention-based compensation initiatives, which had 3 kind of primary goals. One was to establish a 3-year, what we call a mini matrix, which really just gives a person coming into a correctional officer classification with the agency a blueprint for where they're going to be salary-wise after 3 years with the agency. So they're guaranteed a pay increase after each year, which is a little bit under right around 4% per year. And that was an issue that we'd had with retention with new hires. We had focused on bringing up the hourly rate for people that we were bringing into the agency to $22 an hour, but after that, it's kind of choose your adventure. If there was pay for performance, maybe you got it if you had a good supervisor. If there was a percent-based increase that was enterprise-wide, people's pay increased, but it wasn't a guaranteed rate increase. And so what we've been able to do is give people the opportunity to really forecast their salary based on the years worked with the agency to understand, well, if I stay here for 3 years and don't promote, this is what I can this is what I can expect to make, because it's been adopted into the agency's policies. Another thing that we did was we instituted a first of its kind pay differential. And so we have a $2 per hour non-base building pay differential at all of our maximum security facilities, maximum security male facilities. We also instituted $1 per hour at our medium security, one of our juvenile facilities, and our female facility. Again, that's not base building, so if people change positions or change facilities, it doesn't travel with them, but it's an incentive to get them to work the hardest jobs at the hardest places. Those differentials only attach to certain classifications, so the custody officer classifications in particular are where those are assigned. We need correctional officers, we need sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and if people are willing to do that job, we're gonna pay them a little bit more for doing so. And then the other thing that we did was, one of the, I think, unintended consequences of some of the broader enterprise-wide compensation initiatives over the last few years was it created a bit of compression for our longer-term staff. The commissioner's been out in every facility at least twice this year, some of them a dozen times, but one thing that we always heard, and I travel with her, is, and it's difficult to say, but why should I help somebody coming into the agency if they make 20 cents less than me and I've been here for 15 years? And that's not everybody's story, but it was some people's story, and that's true. Why should you? What incentive are we giving you to help that, other than just leaning on you and hoping that you will out of the goodness of your heart, which a lot of people do and have done for the agency. So we also were able to alleviate some of that compression by taking into account state service, years of service with the department, and we were able to kind of scatter salaries better along the ranges that we have for our correctional officers, our custody staff, and our parole staff. And that's alleviated a lot of the pressure. We're hoping to be able to build back the middle. We have a lot of new staff and a lot of very long-term staff, and we're missing that middle. And we're hoping that this will help keep the people that are already with us, and then that knowledge and experience will transfer to the new ones coming in.
Some of the other things that we saw as we were traveling led to, I guess you could call it a retention effort. We would see our staff sitting on milk crates because they didn't have a chair. We were in dorms that were 100 degrees because there's no air conditioning and no fans. So we were able to work again with the state budget agency to use some of the savings that we had from our vacancy rates in our facilities to just improve the physical work environment for our staff. Pretty simple things, again, like chairs and fans, water dispensers. Our staff are required to work 12-hour shifts. Again, oftentimes in the heat, they're only allowed to bring in 2 bottles of water with them for security reasons. So we installed water dispensers throughout the facilities and really just some simple things that gave people confidence that we cared about them being there. We also heard a lot about, because they work the 12-hour shifts, sometimes a 16-hour shift, they can't be relieved from their post, or they can't leave the facility to go pick up lunch. there were vending machines, but they were like traditional frozen hamburger that you're not sure how long it's been in there type of vending machines. So Elliot worked with some of our partners to develop micro markets. You want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, so as you probably all are aware, the Family and Social Services Administration Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services is responsible for maintaining and stocking vending machines all throughout the state. They have, I guess, what you'd call a right of first refusal with respect to those food service type operations. And so we knew that we needed to do something for staff in our facility. So we just had a conversation with them one day and said, hey, we have a vision for establishing kind of like what you think of in an airport, like the self-service kiosk where you go through, pick up something and then pay for it and it's not manned. We gave them an idea of what we wanted to do, thinking they would say, yeah, that's kind of out of our range. And they actually said, no, that would be great. Let's definitely do that. And so that was amazing. And we've spent the last, I guess, 8 or so months implementing micro markets. We've got 6 of them in our facilities now. Actually, I guess we have 7 because there's 2 at Wabash Valley. But they're exclusive to staff, so it's not for visitation purposes or for the incarcerated population. We've also incorporated them into safe spaces within the facilities because it wasn't just go get food, buzz through on your way, and then go to your post. You can certainly do that. But we wanted to give people a place where they could go and safely take a breath too. So as the commissioner was talking about some of the wellness type spending that we've done, we spent a little bit of money to try to reinvigorate rooms within some of our older facilities to secure them, and then also like redo the floor and the paint so that people could feel comfortable just sitting down and having a meal for 10 minutes and just feeling like they're out of danger and they can kind of get back out into there without feeling a lot of stress while they're eating and going through their day. So we've seen that move the needle for a lot of folks. The places where we've done it, Pendleton Juvenile being one that we recently did, and we're pretty excited about that initiative and look forward to growing it over the coming years.
The last major, I guess, section of us addressing our agency staffing is really honing in on workforce development. I've made it very clear to staff that I want to invest in them, and I also expect them to invest in themselves. Things just as simple, so the picture here is our new hires taking an oath of service. We developed the oath of service actually from a suggestion during one of my facility visits. We had a staff member say, there's nothing to really take pride in at the end of graduation. So we worked to develop that oath. It's done at all graduations now, all new employee graduations. And then we also had Oath Month where all current staff also took the oath just to renew that commitment to public safety and to the incarcerated population in our mission. Bringing back just staff recognition opportunities, again, making sure that staff are feeling appreciated. Chief of Staff mentioned our quarterly culture assessments, allowing staff to have a voice and tell us privately and what's on their mind, and then making sure that we take action on that. We created enhanced leadership training. We started allowing families to come to graduations to be a part of the graduation process. And then our biggest initiative was leading from within. We heard from staff what they wanted the agency to be, and we needed to develop an initiative and a program that just really ingrained that into what we do every day. So we worked with the Cardin Group, who's worked with a few other departments of correction, who came in, interviewed our staff, asked them, what do you want this initiative to be? What do you need from your leadership? What do you need from your peers? And then we rolled those into some just really nothing groundbreaking, just pretty simple conversation items and leadership skills that we were able to roll out. We did foundation sessions with the senior leadership team, the wardens, and parole district supervisors. Then we went to all supervisors in the agency, and we're currently in the middle of going through training for the initiative with all non-supervisory staff. So by the end of this, we'll have over 4,200 staff who just have tools to be able to have better conversations and more productive leadership walks. Many of you have probably heard from your constituents about our intake and capacity. So in the past, we would use county jails to kind of assist with our capacity needs, but as county jail population increases with their own inmates, the counties are starting to feel a lot of pressure from our jail holds. You'll see on the graph the jail population. The dark is the F6 diversions that are in county jails, and then the lighter blue is our jail holds. So those are individuals that have been sentenced to DOC, but have not been picked up or transferred to the Department of Correction. Overall, that population is declining. It's interesting, we're actually seeing a flip. So we have more jail holds from ours that have been sentenced to DOC, but they're also holding fewer F6 diversions because they're sentencing F6s to us. So we've seen our F6 population increase by over 1,200. Theirs has dropped by that much, but we're up to 800 jail holds while they're sitting at, in the past, we were around 350 jail holds. So you're seeing it just kind of like the balance switch, even though the population is decreasing. And then, as I said earlier, as we're trying to keep an eye on our population, we're watching those sentencing abstracts, and there's certainly more individuals sitting in jails that aren't ours before, and I think that's just creating that kind of additional pressure. We're doing a lot of work to address this, so it's not just, oh, this is this issue. Now it's a problem for the counties to hold ours, and we pulled in OMB last year to just do a quick review of our intake process. They mapped out the results, looked for some efficiencies or any kind of red flags on where we might be able to make some improvements. Unfortunately, it didn't prove fruitful. They were really satisfied with our intake process and how it was going. We did make some leadership changes at RDC and work towards a kind of a more focused, streamlined process. And we were able to reduce the average length of stay from 33 days to 22 days in 2024. So we have made some progress on that. Part of our issue as well is that I mentioned staffing issues. To account for those staffing issues at places like Miami, we've actually taken some of the beds offline. So we have 1,200 beds at Miami that are offline that we can't use because of our vacancy rate. And what that's doing is kind of creating a backlog. So for us to get somebody into intake that needs to go to a level 3 or 4 bed, we're having to identify where we could level someone down to a level 2 facility to make time and space to get the new intake in. So we also had beds down at Pendleton Correctional Facility and Correctional Industrial Facility. Because of staffing increases there, we actually have been able to bring those beds back up, and that also helped with the overall intake time. In addition, we have a committee that's proposed several options to continue maximizing the space that we have. Some of those things are, identifying space in other facilities that maybe are being held for a certain group of individuals who aren't maximizing that bed space. So we're changing that to maybe a smaller housing unit and allowing us some flexibility there. We'll continue working with that. We're also reviewing our classification designation instrument. We changed that in May of 23, and we're just doing kind of a quick review, not even quick review, we're doing a detailed review to ensure that we didn't, any of the changes that we made weren't driving individuals up higher than the classification that they needed to be. That process is underway. It started with mapping every single piece of the process that was just completed, and then we have a focus group that's meeting to work on that. Okay. The impact of HEA 1004 in 2022, so that's where the F6s, again, were allowed to be sentenced back to DOC, where you see the change on the map there. We do have formula payments that are still going to these counties that are no longer diverting F6s. So our county jail maintenance contingency fund, which is used, one, to pay counties for those F6 diversions, and two, to reimburse counties for our jail holds. Right now, $25 million of that fund is going straight to the counties at the beginning of the year based off an old formula that was developed back when 1006 was first implemented. So this year, we really need to take a look at that $25 million being set aside. We've broached that topic with the Sheriff's Association. We've had several meetings with them, some really good collaboration with them, and looking to determine whether we should go back to just a one-for-one reimbursement instead of that upfront payment of the $25 million. That should allow us some relief to pay counties for the jail holds that we do have. Along with those meetings with the Sheriff's Association, they've done a great job of asking kind of what they can do on their end to assist as well. Some of the issues with intake prioritization comes from one, information is self-reported from the county jails, and we don't always get the accurate self-reported information. And then our team will look in Insight, but if abstracts haven't been loaded into Insight or there's issues with the sentencing abstracts, then our team can't see who to pull from. So we've been working closely with the Sheriff's Association to message that to the counties and help improve that process as well. I've already talked a lot about mental health, so expansion of mental health treatment. We are seeing a large increase in those high acuity cases with juveniles and female population. We also were able to resolve and dismiss monitoring by the ACLU for the IPASS litigation for our individuals who are in restricted housing with mental health issues. But just because that's resolved doesn't mean that we can back off. They were really happy with the way we responded and what we did. We've got to keep kind of full force and continue doing the things that we were doing that allow us to resolve that ACLU case. And we were able to receive opioid settlement funding, we're using that funding to actually pilot injectables for MAT. We're doing MAT already in our facilities. It causes a lot of issues with safety and security, and it's very labor intensive for individuals to come and receive that each day. So we're looking to pilot injectables, which will help streamline a lot of our operations and lessen the burden on custody staff, incarcerated individuals, and our medical staff. And then the last piece of this challenge is long-term inpatient services for sex and violent offenders. Placement for sex offenders is always difficult, but it's even more difficult with individuals who require skilled nursing and other chronic care. So we continue to look for ways to address that. Right now, we only have 1 or 2 facilities willing to take them, and that creates some issues when we go to release an individual with those needs. Right. A little bit about our biennium successes. We added equipment and technology throughout the agency. It's helped increase safety and for both our staff and our incarcerated individuals. Every single staff member at every level facility has the opportunity to wear a dual-purpose vest. Some of our posts do require the wearing of the vest, but every single person has the opportunity to receive a vest. This probably 2 months after we started doing this, we had an individual who was attempted to be stabbed in the vest. The pictures kind of told all. There were several stab marks in the vest, certainly saved a life there. We also are rolling out our body worn camera project. Following a pilot at Miami Correctional Facility, it showed a use of force decrease of 20%. And we are now at the state prison, Westville, Wabash Valley, and Pendleton. And then we plan to be fully implemented by the end of 2025 with body cameras. We're also issuing more tasers, especially to our TRIP staff and our parole agents, so they have a less lethal option to use in case they're in a situation out in the field. We upgraded our offender management system. We actually consolidated 13 separate systems into one single system. No taxpayer dollars were used in that initial development. That was a $25 to $30 million project that we used straight from dedicated funds that we have within our agency. And we're also in the middle of a tablet refresh for our incarcerated population. It'll just increase the programming and services that we can provide, and it'll also streamline some of our grievance processes and some of our access to staff by the incarcerated population. Our reentry division is out there doing great things. All of our key performance metrics, they're blowing out of the water. The employment placements, our hire team actually doubled pre-employment placements for incarcerated individuals, meaning that they have a job before they even leave the facility. They have a start date at a job, and they're good paying jobs. They've also increased their post-release work in 2024, and that just continues to grow year over year. We have 6 facilities that earned the designation of Indiana Adult Education Program of Excellence by the Department of Workforce Development. So our adult basic education is doing really well. And then our vocational certifications, we had a record year for those as well. We had over 1,624 completers over 23-24 for vocational certifications. The outcomes of those show that those with certifications have lower recidivism rates and higher wages overall. We've also seen our industries division grow and enhance collaboration. We've made changes to some processes and increased traditional sales by over 66%. We also added 2 product lines in the vests that I mentioned. The industries division actually makes the carriers for those protective vests, which saved us quite a bit of money over buying those outside of the agency. The industry division is also working with hire. They're having one-on-one sessions with incarcerated individuals who are employed through industries programs, again, ensuring job placement once they leave. And then our parole team, even though we've seen growth in our parole population, they still continue to have successes with employment and wages. We also had our agents during our worst vacancy rates cover more than 1,300 shifts inside our facilities and at hospital watches to help with that. 2024, the average parolee wage increased from $16.87 to $17.77. And nearly 20% of our parolees have a vocational certification, and their hourly wage is $18.06 an hour. Our facility security, I know that we're running a little bit low on time, so I'll go through this, but I don't want to pass up the work that our correctional intelligence analysts do. They host an academy that is known across the U.S. We had 8 different states and 10 different agencies attend that academy this last year, and states look to us to see what we're doing with corrections intelligence. I'm really proud of that. I've spoken about drone and contraband cell phone issues in the past. We've made a lot of progress in that area. We were out on the Hill and we were able to work through multiple states and through the Correctional Leaders Association. And this year, the FAA reauthorization bill created rulemaking specific for correctional institutions, state correctional institutions to be designated no-fly zones. And we've had a lot of success with contraband cell phone work as well, and have collaborated with the FBI on some human trafficking work. Our critical incident stress management and other specialty teams critical incident and stress management is, we call that our SISM team. Suicide rates among correctional officers are 34% higher than other law enforcement officers, and they're 39 to 41% higher than the general national average. And the life expectancy of a correctional officer is 16 years shorter than that of the national average. As far as PTSD goes, 34% of corrections officers screen for PTSD. That's compared to just to 14% for military veterans and 7% of the U.S. Population. So our SISM team is deployed anytime there is an incident inside a facility, even if it is not a person-on-person, if there happens to be a serious suicide attempt or any other type of situation that just would allow for them to meet with somebody and debrief and kind of work through what they're feeling and making sure that we're taking care of our officer and all of our staff's well-being. And we also have several other teams, the K9, E-Squad, CERT. These staff perform these duties without additional compensation. They volunteer for these teams and really appreciate the dedication that they have. You all should have received a one-pager for an update on our now officially named Northwest Indiana Correctional Facility. So that project is 97% bid. It's 95% under contract. The last bid package goes out in January that will wrap up that entire bid process. We're approximately 30% complete. On the back of your one-pager, you see where we were at the groundbreaking and where we're at now, and it's just really exciting to see. If anybody would like to go out and tour the new facility, please reach out. We do regular tours, especially for our staff. We're doing weekly tours for our staff, so certainly can work in anytime. And then just quickly a little bit about our biennium priorities. Obviously, we're still working with the budget agency and the new administration, but just so you have an idea of really where we're headed, our personnel administration, again, the budget was developed when we were at critical levels with staff. We saw a lot of impact there. Same with utilities and technology. The IOTC charges and SPD costs are driven mainly by our staffing. And then we do have several large contracts in our agency that have contracted rate increases and renewals built into those contracts. And just briefly, this is I mentioned earlier, we did our new offender management system that was completely funded through a dedicated source. This was the dedicated source, so our revenues from incarcerated individuals making phone calls or using their tablets. There was, the FCC has instituted rate caps and eliminated the revenues for that, which is going to be a significant impact on our budget. We as an agency always invested that money into technology upgrades to assist with safety and everything surrounding the incarcerated population. Not all agencies did that, which is why advocacy groups were really interested in trying to limit the rates and revenues that were implemented. This will also be a huge impact to facility security operations. There are value adds in our contract that allow us to work with different intelligence analysts and do some things that keep our incarcerated population safe and our staff safe. The Office of the Attorney General did petition for judicial review. We had 14 states join, so we're waiting to hear the outcome of that, but do anticipate probably a $12 to $14 million impact in revenues to our overall budget. Okay.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Delaney?
First of all, thank you very much. Your report was thorough. I was, on your Exhibit 11, I was a little confused. You use these terms quicker than I'm able to use them. You have the chart It's number 11.
Eh,
I'm getting there. One more.
I promise I'm pushing the button.
It doesn't want to go.
It doesn't want to show you.
Well, you've got.
Oh, there we go.
All right. Yeah. Define, F6 means low-level felons, felony
Felony
6.
six,
And are the diversions stuck in the county jail or in your system and the holds vice versa? I'm getting reversal here.
Sure, yeah, so something labeled as an F6 diversion means somebody was sentenced as an F6, but they're sentenced to jail and not to prison. So that's
Okay.
our version of
Okay.
an F6 diversion.
But there are now some people who have the lowest level felony who are nonetheless sent to the prison system, is that right? Is that
Correct.
going up or down, or how's that?
It's going up, it's increased by over 1,200.
Because there's
the past
pressure
year.
to do that, okay. What about the jail population overall? Is that up or down across the state because of between the 1006 reforms and the F6 category? Where is that at?
Sure, and so I can't speak completely to that, but in my conversations with the Sheriff's Association, jail populations are increasing. I can account for our holds, so somebody that's been sentenced as a felon, sentenced to prison, but are still sitting in a county jail because they haven't been transferred to our intake. That is increasing as the diversions are
Now,
decreasing.
those holds are there because you haven't gotten them to your prison yet?
That's correct.
Not because they're going to serve their sentence in the jail?
That's correct.
Okay, but there are people who are serving level 6 felonies strictly in the jail. They never come to you, right?
There are, yes. That's the dark blue
Okay.
on the, mhm.
That's the dark, okay.
That's the dark
That's
blue.
affecting the jails directly, okay. I think in passing, you mentioned the starting pay. What is the starting pay for a correctional officer?
$22 an hour.
Your parolees are getting $17
Yep.
or $18 an hour. I assume that pay level is a part of the problem in recruitment.
It's a challenge. More of a challenge though too has just been like I said, the longer term staff. The differentials have helped with that, especially we're really excited about all the development across the state, but that's also competition for us. We don't build our prisons in the highest population centers. And so when there are battery plants and other things coming online around the state, that's something that we have to compete with. So
Yeah,
we're constantly looking at the wages and hoping that we can get some relief there moving forward.
Okay, and you've helped me. Thank you very much, and good luck with you. By the way, for the record, I think we ought to increase their pay. I told Senator Kadura, I have one brother, he was a prison guard for 35 years. I understand the pressures of those jobs, and I don't think $22 an hour is adequate for what they have to face. I do like some of your suggestions about how you giving them increments, give them a sort of horizon to know that they can get to.
Yeah.
But what's your average compensation for someone who's not a sergeant or lieutenant, who's just stayed at the base level? What's their, when they're there 10, 20 years, what are they making?
The range caps at $60,112, so it's probably somewhere around $50,000. It's a little bit more because they don't work, 37 and a half hours a week. The shift schedule is a little bit different, so that inflates the overall salary a little bit more than that, but it's right around there.
And I assume their pension reflects that level of compensation. Are they in the in-pers system, the standard?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And do you give them any of the extra amount? There's a second option where you can add to their pension. Do you do that?
They can invest in deferred comp, yeah.
Okay,
But we do not.
but you do
And
not
there's
do
no
it.
20 and out for correctional officers, the same way that you might.
There is
have.
no, there is no.
There is not. It's not like traditional law enforcement.
Right. And are there any contract prisons anymore?
There are two.
2? And you've been talking only about state employees here, right?
For the pay, yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kadar?
Thank you. I have one question. Now it's called the Northwest Indiana Correctional Facility, Westville Jail, correct? Or formerly known.
yeah.
Formerly known as, we give 400 million, 800 million total, approximately 1.2 billion from the General Assembly. How much has been committed contractually? How much is unspent? And do you expect any savings from the 1.2 billion?
Yeah. We've spent we've contracted just over 1 billion.
Okay.
Again, we're 97% bid, 95% contracted. And quite honestly, I think it's still too early to know whether there's still some big contingencies there as we move forward. We're 30% complete with construction. As we move forward through construction, I might have a better feel, but for right now, I think it's still too early
Sure.
to know.
What is the timeline to complete the project? What,
Yeah, we expect to open spring of '27.
27? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I believe on the agenda, we have Department of Natural Resources. Welcome, gentlemen. Take your time. Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Shut this off. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate you having us over today to chat a little bit. I'll start off by, you'll notice that Kirsten Haney is not sitting beside me. Kirsten has accepted a position with the city of Carmel. And many of you that have been here for a little while, you'll remember Mike Smith as our former CFO. Mike has graciously agreed through our retiree program to come back for 180 days to get us through the process of session and budget development and things. So we certainly appreciate Mike's willingness to do that. So what we'll do is we'll jump right into this and of course leave time for some questions as we move into it. So, okay, next slide there.
I went too fast. Go ahead.
There you go. All right. All right. Well, my name is Dan Border. I'm the director of the agency. And by way of review, the department consists of 3 bureaus, multiple divisions within each one of those bureaus. We have the Land Holding Bureau. Deputy Director Chris Smith operates that bureau that has all the land holding properties, state parks, fish and wildlife, forestry, nature preserves, and along with communications and land acquisition. The Regulatory Bureau, that is Deputy Director Ryan Miller, has all the regulatory divisions within the agency, Historic Preservation Division of Water, Entomology, and the like there. The Administrative Bureau, which is all of the administrative functions within the agency, and also a CFO, and that is Interim Director Mike Smith. And then we have the Law Enforcement, Legal, Hearings, Natural Resources Commission, Natural Resources Foundation, that are all a part of what we do. Colonel Hunter is with us here today to represent the Law Enforcement Division. And as a reminder, Title 14 comprises the Natural and Cultural Resources Statute of Indiana Code, if you ever need to look anything up there. So moving on, I want to talk to you again about our 7 pillars. These are the foundation that the agency operates on. We put these in 5 years ago. And, you know, we're such a wide and diverse agency, so I've always told staff that when you're having a hard time determining what's most important, look at the 7 pillars, because that's what we operate from. First and foremost is customer service. It's our highest internal and external priority. And then fiscal responsibility, searching for efficiencies and increased revenue opportunities throughout the agency. Communication, internal and external positive messaging for the agency. Inclusion and succession planning, increasing opportunities in our customer base. Personal growth, development opportunities, and increased confidence among our team. A flatter organization, eliminating silos and duplication where we can do so. And then the last one is enhancing the DNR brand, which is providing quality experiences and an emotional connection to what we do. Next slide. So in looking at the fiscal year 24 and 25 budget, okay, go ahead to the next one there, Mike. There we go. Fiscal year 25 appropriation, the general fund was $65,429,499. Dedicated funds, $97,062,731. And then the federal opportunities, $38,685,876. And so that's the fiscal year 25 appropriation by the funding source. Okay, next slide. Accomplishments in the fiscal year 24 and 25 biennium. The first let's talk about is deferred maintenance. If you recall, in 2022, we had the $100 million awarded to work towards deferred maintenance. And of that $100 million awarded, roughly $17 million of that remains available, which is less than 18% of it. And we're holding on to that as we're seeing everywhere across the state, price overruns. So we're holding on to that make sure that we can come in where we need to come in. There are several projects that are waiting if there is any of that funding left. We've got some ideas of where we need to go with that, but we're going to wait and see. Funds are earmarked for projects, but not encumbered until released for bid, of course. Projects recently completed. The Whitewater State Park Nature Center building exterior has been done. Patoka Lake and Whitewater State Park playgrounds have been installed. The McCormick's Creek State Park and Turkey Run State Park underground fuel tanks replaced and trail structures complete with those two properties. Wabache State Park's office renovation design and construction documents are now complete. That has been a long time coming. Next slide there. The Spring Mill Inn, if any of you have had the opportunity to possibly get down there since we reopened that. This was, if you remember, this was a stud-out renovation. We took the walls out. It was a complete renovation of this facility, which was built in 1939. Restoration of 71 guest rooms, room interiors, bathrooms, HVAC, and all the furnishings. Renovation of upper and lower lobbies, service desk, gift shop, interior hallways, game room, improved accessibility throughout. If you recall, if you had mobility issues, you couldn't go through the front door of this building because it led straight to steps. You had to go through the restaurant. We've changed that. Now you go through the front door like everybody else does. Restoration of kitchen equipment, and Lakeview banquet facility. Installation of whole house generator. New variable refrigerant flow VRF HVAC system. Second elevator and splash pad conversion that are coming in the spring of 2025. The lodge is now open. Those projects are not complete yet as far as the splash pad and the second elevator. But we went ahead and got things open because I had promised legislators and I had promised the governor that we would be serving Thanksgiving dinner in that place in 2024, and we did. So we got that part done. The Spring Mill Inn two-story parking deck was part of this as well. That was also completed November 20th, 2024. Refurbished the upper and lower decks, structural improvements and top coatings, lighting improvements, new staircases and stone fascia. So the project there at Spring Mill is almost complete, and we are getting rave reviews from the public on that. Next one. The 1 million tree project has been completed. We planted the millionth tree on the State House lawn here back in April. And just kind of a breakdown by year on that. In 2020, we planted 213,500 trees, 208,100 in 21, 257,500 in 2022, 253,400 in 2023, and 195,000 this year. And like I said, it's been a challenge. We had a lot of partners that helped us to plant those trees. The Indiana Natural Resources Foundation, Cliff Bar Baking Company, Duke Energy, Hardwood Forestry Fund helped out, the White Oak Initiative, and Houston Solar. And when I say they helped out financially, but they also came out with boots on the ground to help us put trees in the ground. So that was a blessing to be able to get that done. Next one. Next, I'd like to talk about Next Level Trails. That project is moving along. If you recall, we were awarded a total of $180 million for this project. As of right now, we've dispersed $81.2 million of that, encumbered $98.8 million. So things are moving along very, very well with a lot of trails. From a mileage report, the next one. There we go.
Well, that,
Yeah, that's right. One more. So close. Okay, there we are. 217.9 miles have been awarded, and I will make mention that through the 4 rounds, we had 499 projects that were asked for. We were able to fund 83 of those. So we've completed 106.44 miles. There are 65.45 miles that are currently under construction and still at 46.01 miles still planned for Next Level Trails. And I will talk about the Monon South, which is the next slide. And if you recall, the Monon South, when complete, will be the longest contiguous trail in the state of Indiana at just a little over 62 miles. It'll run from almost to the river there at New Albany, all the way up to the south, or to the north side of Mitchell, just on this side of the White River there. But we are actually going to be cutting our ribbon on the first completed section of that trail this Thursday down in Orange County. Orange County has a small section that'll be completed in time for us to cut a ribbon on that. So if you're around on Thursday and want to see Indiana's vision of Mayberry, Indiana, come to Orleans and beautiful Congress Square and come see us cut the ribbon for the first section of the Monon South. In the Harrison Trust, if you remember, there was $10 million appropriated for that fiscal 23-24. 26 projects were presented to the project committee since July of 2023. 3 projects have been withdrawn, but 2 projects closed for 62.37 acres. 4 projects are in offered and state signature process for a combined 344 acres. And there are 17 projects in process, 5,014,789 committed for 1,066 acres. So the Harrison Trust is moving along just fine. Lots of opportunity to put land in conservation. Next slide.
I think it was this one.
Ah, there we go, yep. The Next Level Conservation Trust, the $25 million awarded there. 19 projects have closed for $12,804,727, 2,291 acres. 5 projects in offer signature process, $6,651,500 and 1,056 acres. And I believe the Busseron project that we just closed on over near Crane was a part of that. So, 3,000 acres, I believe, Chris? So, all right, let's move to the next one. And the Lilly Endowment Grant. We were very fortunate. The good folks at the Lilly Foundation had reached out to us. They had been approached by the National Park Service Foundation seeking funding. And we met with them to explain to them how the National Park Service operates within the state of Indiana, kind of how they are different than what we do, just basically explaining to them how that organization operates through their foundation and things. And of course, you can't go in there and talk to them without asking for some money too. So we asked as well. And at the end of the day, $100 million went to the National Park Service Foundation and $50 million went to Indiana State Parks. Next slide. So it was a historic investment from the Lilly Endowment, total of $50 million.
Want that?
Yeah, that's close enough. $25 million of that is going towards Prophetstown State Park, and then the other 25 will go across the Division of State Parks. One thing I want to make mention of, what they gave us was $40 million, and so the final $10 million is contingent upon us being able to raise another $10 million. So at the end of the day, the $50 million grant will be a $60 million grant if we're able to achieve that. So let's talk about the $25 million that is going towards Prophetstown State Park. But that's going to go into campground development. The master plan there, the current campground that we have at Prophetstown State Park is the first half of the campground. When the property was opened in 2004, they opened half the campground. This will allow us to finish up the campground to give it to all of the sites that it needs. The Prophetstown Heritage Area, that's going to receive $8 million. This area will feature facilities such as a visitor center, outdoor exhibits, and a recreated Native American village. This heritage area is where we will tell the story of Prophetstown and the historic significance that makes it what it is. We're going to put $1 million into trail development. You know, we measure everything on the properties from a standpoint of what our guests are looking for, and they tell us time and time again, the #1 recreational opportunity we have on the properties that they enjoy is trails. And so we're going to put $1 million into that. The Aquatic Center restoration and enhancement, that particular facility up there has started to get a little bit of age on it, so we're going to put $1 million to upgrades to the pool and the other water features there. Okay, next one. The other investments across the Indiana State Parks, as we said, the other $25 million will go to. $10 million of that will go towards campground improvements. You know, we still have a lot of issues that need to be upgraded to full service with electricity and water and sewer connections. You know, the days of folks coming out, I'm still a tent camper, but I'm a dinosaur. Not many people are, and they're looking for those amenities. And playground replacements, we want to put $11 million into that. Playgrounds all across the Indiana State Parks will be renovated and repaired. Historic structures repairs, $3 million will go to that. The historic stone and log structures, retaining walls, and stone staircases that were built in the 30s will receive masonry repairs and accessibility improvements. Motorized wheelchairs, we have several of those across the system now. They are hugely popular. It gives folks with mobility issues the opportunity to get out onto the trails and things. So we're going to put $1 million into that, and hopefully that'll get us, we're going to try to get some more bargaining power. You know, when you've got that kind of money to invest, hopefully you can get more than what you normally would, but we're going to put some money into those. So let's talk about the lodge at Potato Creek. Go back one if you would. There we go. Oh, other direction. There we go. Okay. The Lodge at Potato Creek is under construction. We laid the cornerstone for this 2 weeks ago. So we have basement walls. It's starting to look like something. And so now, once we've laid the cornerstone, now all the construction will be above ground, and we'll actually start building a hotel up there. Concrete footer and wall pours are progressing. Concrete curbing pours are complete with paving to begin soon. We've installed the main sewer trunk, initiated water line installation. Fiber optics are installed and on site. The water tower is complete with water and sewer lines progressing from North Liberty to the park. Part of this, we've connected our water and sewer to the town of North Liberty, so that's been a blessing for both them and us. Elevator towers should begin to emerge in the next couple of weeks. And as a reminder, this is a $100 million project that we're doing up there just south of the University of Notre Dame. We hope to take full advantage of the shoulder seasons where they're still usually playing football up there. We expect, if everything goes according to the way we want it, to open that lodge in late '26 and early 2027. Next one. Okay. Abandoned oil and gas well plugging. If you recall, DNR received $25 million in federal grant funding to initiate a well plugging effort. And since January 2023, 359 wells have been plugged at a cost of $21.6 million. DNR has received an additional $14 million through a second phase of federal grant funding to continue the effort. We're making a lot of headway on getting a lot of these old facilities plugged up and taken care of. DNR's Division of Reclamation has identified 1,264 leaking wells statewide, and this gives us a huge opportunity to take care of some of those. Here we go. Abandoned mine land reclamation. Indiana will receive $24.7 million per year for the next 15 years to remediate and reclaim abandoned coal mine lands through the bipartisan infrastructure law. DNR's Division of Reclamation's abandoned mine land staff currently have 9 projects in design with consulting firms and are working to finalize 6 more of those. DNR has identified nearly 80 sites that are going to be addressed through this effort, so we are very thankful to get the funding to be able to do that. The AML program was created with passage of the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act of 1977 to address public safety and environmental concerns for mining activity, all prior to 1977. Next slide. Here we go. Law enforcement. We finished up a recruit class with graduation in November of this year. 23 new sworn officers joined the ranks of Indiana conservation officers after a successful 2024 recruit class, as we said, that graduated in November. Those officers, several of them had already been through the academy, so they are out and actually working deer hunts and things like that now. We have 3 Indiana canines that were trained in conjunction with a canine from Arkansas during our winter 2023 and early spring of 2024 training class. It's a class that we do each year for the canines. A future canine school will occur in 2025 to train 5 DNR canines. 3 will be replacement dogs for tenured canine handlers and 2 for new handlers. And that particular program we're very proud of because we bring in folks from other states to have their canines trained here as well. We've even had them from other countries. That helps us pay for the school. So it's a blessing to be able to do that. Next one. Okay, we got a, let's see. Yeah, did we skip the legacy system updates? Go back one and see what you get. Okay, maybe I'm out of order. Let's go recreational revenue. We'll go with that. If you look at the numbers here, back to the chart, COVID, when we come back from COVID in fiscal year 21, visitation and revenue went through the roof. We took a little bit of a dip in 22, and it started coming back in 2023 as things fully opened up. In fiscal year 2024, the numbers were actually higher than fiscal year 21. What we are seeing, what we're pretty well confident of, and what we're seeing around the country is that this is going to be the new normal. We think that this is about where we're going to be for a while because things have started to level off in the recreation industry, but they've leveled off at a higher amount. People have rediscovered the outdoors. Any place there is green space, whether it's a local park, state park, federal park, whatever. It's very, very busy. The National Park Service is now conducting timed entry. We don't think that we have to do anything like that, but you have to make an appointment to go to Yellowstone now. And so, like I said, people have rediscovered the outdoors, which is a blessing for the RV industry. You know, Indiana has a lot of ties to that, and 3.2% of the GDP in the state of Indiana is in recreation, so people have rediscovered it. DNR recreational revenue year-to-date, you can look at that, and we are, in fiscal year '25, we were ahead of where we were in '24 at the same time period, so we expect to finish very, very strong. People are coming to the properties earlier to camp. Used to, you didn't see a whole lot until you got into late May. Now, as soon as the snow breaks, people are coming out. We're seeing people coming in March. We've gone now to where we keep one loop open all the time, year-round, because people are camping right now. I pulled into Spring Mill last weekend, and there was a camper in front of me. I thought, okay, bring it on. But people are doing it, and we love it. So, next one. All right, fish and wildlife sales. They have remained fairly flat since the dip we saw in 2022. We've just gone to a new system that we'll talk about a little bit here in a minute, but everything seems to be there again, leveled off, which is good because, like I said, we saw that dip there between 21 and 22. That kind of it came back to, but it was below 2020. We expected to have a little bit of a dip with the COVID and things like that. It shot up like outdoor recreation did as a whole, but we got a little nervous in 2022, but it has leveled off, so we're good to go there. Next slide. Turkey license sales have increased. People have discovered turkey hunting, and it's kind of like golf. If you've never done it, it's not as easy as it looks. And so people have embraced that, and we've continued to see licenses being purchased for that one. In 2024, it has held pretty steady. Next one. All right.
We took the legacy out.
Okay, that would explain it then. All right, some of the challenges that we have. And you got to go back one.
That's where it starts.
Sure.
There it is.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, we'll start with
There
that.
it is.
The carbon program launch, there we go. The proposed interim rule establishes the applicability of carbon sequestration projects in conjunction with Indiana Code 1439-2. This is going to take some work getting this up and launched. We've got good working groups. The industry has been very, very good about sitting down and talking about the needs that we're going to have to address, but it's new to all of us. So we do see that getting that up and launched is going to just be a challenge for us. The next one, obviously, the reopening of campground at McCormick's Creek State Park. It is progressing along very, very well. If you go in there now, I know some folks have toured it. It looks like a vacant cornfield. There's none of the foliage is left. We've been very, very blessed to be able to get all that out of there, and we're working with a blank slate. But following the tornado that directly and seriously impacted McCormick's Creek State Park, much of the park is reopened for guests. The campground does remain closed. Salvage harvest cleared the campground of remaining debris, and planning is being finalized for the new campground design. We expect that to be somewhere in the neighborhood of a $27 million project when the time is ready to move forward with that. Of course, the opening of the Lodge at Potato Creek State Park, continuing to move forward. Construction is well underway, as you saw, the first Indiana State Park Inn or Lodge to be built since 1939, projected to open in, like we said, late 26, early 27. Additional concerns that we have, modernization of state fish hatcheries. DNR now has 7 fish hatcheries that produce 27 million fish annually for the state's approximately 356,000 licensed anglers. The DNR needs modern fish hatchery systems to effectively provide appropriate fishing opportunities for the demand as the department continues to have significant loss in fish production due to our outdated systems. These losses mean fewer fishing opportunities. Having fewer fishing opportunities means less spending by anglers, a decrease in related economic output, and a loss of jobs related to recreational fishing. The facilities that we are working with have been around for a lot of years. And it's, yes, it's still water and it's still fish, but being able to avoid a power outage where you lose thousands of fish at a time, just a lot of the things that you have to deal with when you're in this business. So that's certainly a concern. Expanding customer demographics. While Indiana's demographics continue to become more diverse, the current user base for our outdoor recreation has to continue growing in line with those demographics to continue to attract more Hoosiers to love and care for Indiana's natural resources. And the department must work to expand our user base. In state parks alone, we're about 90% self-funded. And if you look at the population demographics in the state of Indiana and how those are going to change, if you drive through our campgrounds on a Friday night, we have work to do. If we don't reflect the population of the state of Indiana, those funds that are user fees don't continue coming to us. So, like I said, not only, these special places, Indiana's most special places that we have to offer belong to all Hoosiers. And being able to expose them to those things that they've got right here on, we have a state park within an hour's drive of every Hoosier. We want folks to use them. We want folks to visit them. They belong to them. And so we just got to make sure that we're trying to get that message out there that everyone is welcome in these properties. Addressing infrastructure needs, much of the infrastructure on Indiana's public lands is aging, including wastewater treatment systems. DNR is working to either connect to local water utilities or invest in current systems to address the need. We've been able to hook to several. As we said, North Liberty, we hooked Potato Creek State Park up there. Dean Lake is being hooked up. We've worked on several, McCormick's Creek as well. Anytime we can hook up to the local municipalities, it's a win-win for them. They're getting a much higher customer base, and we aren't working with infrastructure that was put in the 1930s. So it's a benefit to all of us when we're able to do that. Okay, next slide. Okay, that leads us to questions.
Thank you. Any questions from members of committee? Thank you. Senator Garten?
Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Bortner, for your presentation. I just got a couple questions and maybe a comment or two here.
Sure.
Should come as no surprise to this committee, certainly not to my caucus, because I've been pretty vocal on this issue. It is still mind-boggling to me that we spend almost $1 million per trail mile.
Sure.
I walk them. I'm pro trail. I'm not pro $1 million per trail. And again, I think the last statistic I read is that we can pave a mile lane of I-65 for about $250,000.
Yeah.
And so help me,
Yeah.
I know it's redundant and I apologize, but help me
and the
understand
same
why
answer-
this is so costly.
Certainly. The same answer
Sure.
I've given before is that I-69 already existed. I have to buy the land for the trails. So you have added cost. You have not only the construction, but you're getting it from a railroad. You have to reclaim everything that is there. You have to get all the nasty stuff out of there that's been on the rail lines. And then once you've got it ready, then you have to build on it. So I don't disagree. It's a lot of money, Senator, no question.
No, I appreciate that. And again, it's redundant, but I feel like I've got to say it because again, it boggles my mind every time I see the math. The other thing I want to talk about real quick is the Next Level Conservation Trust. I can't remember what number slide that was for you, but it was.
We struggled with those slides.
That's okay. No, that's okay. So you had 19 projects, a little over 12 million, about a little over almost 2,300 acres. That comes out to be about $5,589.14 per acre. You then pointed out 5 projects that are in the offer sort of signature process. Those total would be about 6,298 per acre, so almost 6,300. It's about a 13% increase. And so I'm just curious, what's different about those 5 projects than the previous 19?
Sure. Chris, I'm not sure what all we have still waiting in that. Do you know which one?
Yeah, so good afternoon, Chris Smith, Deputy Director, Department of Natural Resources. Every land acquisition piece is different, so it depends upon what the prior use is, whether it's current ag. Current ag is running pretty high at the moment, so my guess is they're probably current ag properties that didn't get converted. Some of it's just based upon where it is in state too versus what your per acre costs are.
What's ag land in Lebanon right now?
Pardon?
What's ag land cost in Lebanon per acre? It's went up. Okay, no, I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you.
We're not looking in that area.
Yeah, I would hope not. Again, when I see an increase like that over projects, I want to bring it up and ask. I want to jump over real quick to the ends side of things. And so help me understand, how does that work for the ends? So we fund the capital side of that. Do they produce any money that goes back to the general fund on the inside of things?
They're a quasi-state agency, obviously. Sure. And so the funds that they raise, they put back into the business. And trying to, we bring in about 27 million a year, costs us anywhere from 23 to 25 to operate with labor and everything else.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time? I missed that. I
That's it.
apologize.
We bring in about 27. It can be anywhere from really 21 to 25 is what it costs us to operate depending on the year. And then whatever else they have, it's all constantly on furnishings and things like that. You know, the state of Indiana owns the lodges themselves. They're not owned by the quasi. And so we have to, just like if we were renting out a saddle barn, if we have a concessionaire running a saddle barn, it's up to us to repair the saddle barn to provide the service. It's the same thing here.
So if you calculate the monies we've invested though on the capital side of things, are we in the red on the ends or are we in the black?
As far as the capital side,
Well, we the state, we're still investing through capital allocations, right? The investments in some of these ends. Are we, if you count that into the 21 to 25 you said it takes to operate,
yeah.
are we in the red? or
I'll
are we
have
in
to
the-
check with that. If I told you, I'd just be guessing.
No, that's okay.
Let me get you an
That's
answer
okay.
to that.
And then just, again, regarding the overall budget for the ends, my understanding is we're over budget in that space particular. Can you speak to that or?
As far as, you know, if you have to take into consideration that the revenue coming in for the last 2 years with Spring Mill being shut down for 2 years, and then at Canyon, because we didn't have a campground, we didn't have the normal opportunity for folks coming in. We're still open at Canyon, but you don't have the same volume of customer until we get that campground back opened up again. So it's been pretty tight.
So the amount of money we're off is directly, that's the delta difference. in what we
I would have to
lost.
check the numbers to see, but I do know
I'd be
that we've
interested,
been
yeah.
watching that very, very closely.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? Representative Porter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not a question, but I remember during the past administration, Pence, it started off at $25 million for this project to happen, for the roads to happen. And it went up, and we were supposed to erect some cell towers also to help pay for that. And that did not materialize. So the cost is that we started it, but it never got completed. Supposed to have cell towers to help pay for it. That didn't happen. So 6 years, 8 years later, 6 years later, this is where we are.
Thank you. Further questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I believe next on the agenda, we have the Department of Workforce Development. If they would come forward, please. Welcome, and take your time whenever you're ready. The floor is yours, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Good afternoon. I'm Richard Paulk, Commissioner of the Department of Workforce Development. Here with me is DWD's Chief Financial Officer, Mike Smith. Our intention today is to give you a high-level overview of the agency, our budget, and operations primarily over the last 2 completed fiscal years. At the department, our vision is economic security and better employment outcomes for all Hoosiers. Employment is the overriding objective. While DWD serves a broad range of Hoosiers, we're funded to provide services to designated populations on a priority basis. Those populations include Hoosiers who are unemployed, underemployed, basic skills deficient like lacking a high school diploma or equivalency, those who have significant barriers to employment like insufficient English language proficiency, and those who are on public assistance. Through our programs administered by our Workforce Services Division and our Unemployment Insurance Division, we provide a bridge between job seekers and employers. As you can see for fiscal years 2024 and 2025, DWD is primarily federally funded at approximately 85% from all federal sources. Roughly 10% of our funds are state appropriated, and we'll spend the bulk of our time this afternoon discussing programs funded with state appropriations. The remaining 5% are state dedicated funds primarily utilized to ensure the integrity of the Unemployment Insurance Compensation Trust Fund. The 2014 Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, as amended, or WIOA, requires the governor to establish a state workforce board. Ours is the governor's workforce cabinet, which in turn establishes the regional or local workforce development areas. Those terms are used interchangeably, and in Indiana, we have 12 such regions. Each regional workforce development area has a board chaired by a local business representative, and all members are appointed by the chief local elected official. The regional boards hire companies to operate the American Job Centers, which are called Work Ones in Indiana. Federal workforce funds received by DWD are passed through to the regions on a formula funding basis designated by the U.S. Department of Labor. DWD's responsibility is to administer the public workforce development system by providing monitoring, oversight, and technical assistance to the regions to ensure funds are expended consistent with WIOA and USDOL requirements. The regions primarily focus on direct service delivery to our priority populations. The first of the state appropriated programs I'd like to talk about is Workforce Ready Grant, or WRG. WRG is a state appropriated program that provides funding to eligible participants to obtain short-term occupational skills training and industry-recognized credentials in in-demand occupations in high-growth sectors of Indiana's economy. The designated industry sectors covered by WRG are advanced manufacturing, building and construction, health and life sciences, IT and business services, transportation and logistics, and early childhood education. In the two most recently completed fiscal years, roughly 2,800 people participated in WRG grant. Credentials were earned by a couple of thousand folks. Average hourly wage post-training is just over $24 an hour, and the average cost per trainee is about $2,100. Employer Training Grant, or ETG, reimburses employers who train, hire, and retain new or incumbent workers to fill in-demand positions in 8 industry sectors: agriculture, teaching, in addition to the 6 industry sectors which also apply to WRG. Employer Training Grant reimburses eligible employers up to $5,000 per employee, subject to a $50,000 cap per employer. Cover training must be occupational skills training towards an in-demand occupation, result in a certificate or credential, and for incumbent workers, ensure a wage gain. Over the last 2 years, just shy of 1,400 employers participated in the program, trained nearly 11,000 of their employees and helped them upskill. Average hourly wages post-training are $23, and just a little bit shy of $30,000 were invested per employer. Jobs for America's Graduates, or JAG, is a national and statewide resiliency building workforce preparation program that targets at-risk high school students. The program provides skills assessment and remediation, in-demand employability skills, help to ensure graduates remain employed after graduation, and 1 year of follow-up service after graduation. Since 2006, more than 45,000 Hoosier youth have participated in JAG, which has an average graduation rate of 97%, as compared to 89% for Indiana high school seniors generally in 2023. In the last 12 to 18 months, with Governor Holcomb's leadership and support, we've doubled the number of JAG programs across the state from 125 to 150 programs, and we now have the capacity to serve 10,000 Hoosier youth on an annual basis. Adult education is part of Title II of WIOA. It is intended to improve basic academic and employability skills of adult learners, including attainment of a high school diploma or equivalency, or transition to post-secondary education and training. In the current biennium, the General Assembly increased adult education funding and allowed greater use of the funds for workforce training like Integrated Education and Training, or IETs. IETs provide adult education and literacy activities simultaneously and contextually with workforce preparation activities and workforce training for a specific occupation. In the current biennium, we've increased adult education enrollment by 28%. Indiana is second nationally in IET enrollment in absolute numbers, third nationally in high school equivalencies earned in absolute numbers, and first in the nation in educational attainment. DWD's, oh, are we done? Okay, we're stuck. All right, I know you guys have this in front of you as well. Oh, there we go, thank you. Okay, DWD's Office of Work-Based Learning and Apprenticeship, or OWABLA, was stood up by Governor Holcomb in 2018 and leads Indiana's registered apprenticeship efforts. In this capacity, OWABLA has created and implemented a statewide plan in coordination with the U.S. Department of Labor on registered apprenticeship. It's also developed a framework for pre-apprenticeship models that articulate into registered apprenticeship programs, reducing costs to employers and time to completion for apprentices. OWABLA also assists employers in expanding capacities around work-based learning through targeted resources and tools, and coordinates a network of partners and intermediaries that support and impact work-based learning programs across the state. In the last 2 completed fiscal years, Indiana has ranked as high as number 2 in the country for new apprenticeships, number 3 for completions, and number 1 for the number of apprentices per capita. At present, there are over 20,000 registered apprentices across the state of Indiana as we speak. Pivot is an exciting tool that DWD launched in 2023. DWD has long had great tools and resources for job seekers, but we are now using technology to bring the most relevant of those resources to the job seeker when they need it most, after losing a job. Pivot is a cloud-based application that is currently delivered through Uplink, our unemployment claims filing system. In other words, we're meeting folks where they are. The application makes use of a significant amount of data that DWD possesses, along with our partners at the Department of Education and the Commission for Higher Education, to train an AI algorithm. When a worker files an unemployment insurance claim, we can use the data that they've already provided to generate recommendations based on real data regarding occupational opportunities. We bring the most relevant information from multiple DWD resources to the user, all without requiring them to visit a different site or create a new login. We've had very promising success in seeing users interact with Pivot over its first year of implementation, as evidenced by its approximate 50% response rate. By way of comparison, usual response rates for email outreach campaigns might be 2%. So of people who've pursued their top recommendation given to them by Pivot, they've received a $4 an hour pay increase compared to their previous employment. Through our wage records, we're able to measure the re-employment of the user, giving us an effective way to measure outcomes. As additional upgrades are made to Pivot via pre-existing data, we are able to better recommend learning and job options. We plan to continue to enhance and improve the system and hope to expand access to more Hoosiers. Speaking of Pivot, we're going to pivot now to the unemployment insurance system. Unemployment insurance system is a federal state partnership with the U.S. Department of Labor and the state of Indiana. So working right to left on the graphic, Indiana businesses pay state and federal taxes, which go into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund housed at the U.S. Treasury. DWD is authorized to make withdrawals from the trust fund for the sole purpose of payment of unemployment insurance benefits to workers. DWD receives a portion of the federal funds Indiana employers remit to U.S. DOL back from DOL to administer the unemployment insurance program in Indiana. Like all states, Indiana experienced an unprecedented volume of claims during the pandemic, the shaded area on the right of the chart, which greatly exceeded Great Recession volumes, the shaded area on the left of the chart. While claims levels have recovered, we still have operational requirements stemming from these pandemic activities. The Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund was bolstered by a series of transfers and CARES Act funds and is structurally stable. Still. Okay. There we go. Okay, thank you. Indiana's unemployment insurance trust fund balance is on a healthy trajectory as a result of CARES Act transfers and of 2011 legislation passed by the General Assembly, the implementation of which caused trust fund revenues to begin to exceed benefits payments. Despite the positive trend, Indiana was in a net federal borrowing position until late 2015. The trust fund balance peaked at just under $1 billion in December of 2019, shortly before the pandemic, again, the gray shaded area in the graph. The dip in the balance in the gray shaded area reflects the unprecedented volume of unemployment insurance benefit payments made during the pandemic. We briefly had a reversion to borrowing in November and December of 2020, but have since had a strong recovery, with the balance currently hovering around $1.6 billion. Finally, for fiscal years 2024 and 25, state budget appropriations have remained relatively flat to the Department of Workforce Development. Increases are primarily in adult education and a small amount for administration, largely driven by the comp study and our mandated standing up of an internal audit function. That's the end of our prepared remarks. Mike and I are happy to answer any questions anyone may have for us.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions? Members of committee? Representative Porter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. Thank you for the presentation. Going back to, I guess almost to your last slide about the unemployment trust fund, it's good that we are where we are. But are we at the state level for the federal government recommendations in regards to what they would recommend currently?
Oh, thank you for the question, Mike. I'm going to actually let you answer that one if you don't mind.
We are currently below what they would establish as a solvency ratio, but each state gets to manage their own approach to that. But we're currently not at their level that they call 1.0 level, which means solvent according to their balances.
So you said we're below?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Their threshold of what they establish as solvent.
Contextualize that, Mike, at 0.68.
So yes, a 1.0 level on their mathematics, and I'd be happy to chat more offline with you about all the calculations that go into that. Indiana is at a 0.68 on that 1.0 scale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions, members of committee? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I believe next, if they're ready, is the Attorney General. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Now we've caught up, I think, haven't we? Here, I get my microphone on. Welcome, Attorney General Wakita. Glad you're here. Take your time. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule. Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me. I made the decision to take the stairs all the way up here, so not as young as when I was Secretary of State. Excuse me. But good afternoon. I appreciate each of you and your time and attention here. Having been a legislator, and on the Budget Committee, no less, I feel I'm sort of aware of the decisions that you all have to make and face. And with that in mind, I'm pleased to say that I'm coming to you as your Attorney General with a flatline budget request, no increase whatsoever. That's not to say that we're swimming in a bunch of money or anything like that. In fact, with some new laws that you gave us to implement, for example, the healthcare merger notice law, the floodgates have kind of opened in that section of our office, and we have so many to look at that it's already not only a stress point, but we're finding non-attorney needs, for example, like an economist that we have to get on board as to fairly look at these things, which we're doing and which we're surviving. So we have a flatline budget request that we're making. Last year, or last time when I came before you, we were talking about a 25% turnover rate of our attorneys. And I'm thankful and pleased that when you listen to us, we're able to bump up our attorneys to make us competitive, sort of, in the marketplace. And then, Chairman, letting the kind of work we do and the kind of people we select who are interested in public service kind of take over from there and meet halfway. And that 25% has gone down to 12% as I stand before you today. And it's better than, perhaps Mr. Delaney would agree, it's better than what we find in the private sector in terms of turnover in firms. Maybe not the Delaney and Delaney law firm, but certainly on average across this country and in Indiana. So I'm pleased to report that. I mentioned fantastic public servants at the Attorney General's office, and I'm joined by a few of them today. First of all, Corey Voigt is here. He's our Assistant Chief Deputy Attorney General. He, along with Chief Deputy Lori Torres and Assistant Chief Blake Lanning, oversee the legal work of the office. They're part of my core four, along with Jamie Weber, who's my Chief of Staff. They're my go-to people on a daily basis as we run an office of over 400, 200 attorneys, 200 assisting staff. I mentioned their names because you should feel free, in the event you can't reach me, to go to them directly as well. That's Corey Voigt, Blake Lanning, Lori Torres, and Jamie Weber. But of course, I'm sure that you're able to find me when you want me and need me. I pride myself on being accessible. If not, I'll work harder to change that. Sitting next to me is Clinton Baum. He's my Chief Administrative Officer and is well-versed in all things state government. Has been around in a lot of agencies. I shouldn't say a lot, several key agencies for several years. And then Chris Fletcher, my Chief Financial Officer, is also here and can help field questions. So who we are and what we do, real briefly, we have an advisory division that you all should know about. It's available to you to get advisory opinions from. It's available to state agencies and others. They do excellent work. We have an appeals division that has a 95% success rate. And that's when you, criminals, I think, criminal appeals is 94% and civil appeals is 96%. They do excellent work. A litigation division that is one of our largest, and they're doing an excellent job. Anytime the state sues or gets sued, goes through this division. Consumer protection, that's everything from opioid settlements, large settlements, affects each one of your counties, to the one-off car dealer enforcement action that we have to take, and everything in between. At any given time, they probably have 15 or 20,000 cases open. A Solicitor General. You hear a lot about this division in the newspaper. This is fighting against federal government overreach, fighting for state sovereignty, everything from EPA to pro-life litigation that you pass runs through our Solicitor General. And then we have the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, one of the top in the nation. Our leader in that division, Matt Whitmire, is literally leading the nation's units at this particular time. They're just continuing to do a great job. And unclaimed property. We've had the two best years in its history in returning property to the people of Indiana so that we don't keep it, which of course is the case after 25 years. So here's our caseloads, what we've opened and closed in 2024. You can see it's relatively same. We're keeping up on our cases. We're closing them. We're closing cases as we open them, roughly. And then you see our total number of cases there, over 27,000. On the right side, you see the caseload by agency. In our appeals division, headed by Angela Sanchez, Chief Counsel, a very busy week this week, a very heavy, serious week this week. But at other times, you see some of the other cases that they've been a part of, from the Franciscan Alliance, which prevented potentially catastrophic road construction costs, to the Rust versus Morales case that determined your intention, or excuse me, fortified your intention of who should be on the ballot and when, to the Hans Barn case, which affirmed convictions and 4 consecutive life sentences without parole for the murder of a mother and 3 young children. I highlighted these 3 cases so you see the depth and breadth of the issues that this division alone faces. In our litigation division, we're blessed to have Chief Counsel Patricia Erdman. She's been with us for 22 years. She could and maybe should, if someone else was looking at this, be the managing partner of a major law firm, but instead she's heading up one of the most exciting and largest divisions in law, and that's our litigation division. They have recouped $17.6 million for us, for the state, for taxpayers in 2024, fiscal year 2024 alone. Next slide. Protection of state interest real quick. You see where we're spending our time in terms of sign-on letters and amicus briefs, in terms of co-joining with other states, and the issues that we're most faced with, which you see environmental is huge, abortion is big, First Amendment issues, ESG, elections, transgender, immigration, round up the top 5 or 6. Defense of your legislation takes up a tremendous amount of our time, and we're proud to defend the laws that you pass. Pro-life laws in 2023, the Supreme Court rejected the argument that Indiana's pro-life law violates an unwritten right to abortion, and that law stands. Teaching sex in schools in 2023, the district court upheld the state law that ensures our very youngest school children do not receive inappropriate education on that matter. Age verification in 2024, the 7th Circuit allowed Indiana to implement its law requiring websites that offer hardcore pornography to verify that users are adults. Protecting Hoosier children. Just recently, the 7th Circuit upheld the state's law barring unproven transgender surgeries. Next slide, please. Opioid settlement. Here are the latest numbers. We continue to receive funds from the master settlement from companies who wrongly marketed opioids on our citizens. The lawsuit is live in the sense that others might be added in the future, maybe additional lawsuits. But that stream of money shall be coming, continue to come to the state of Indiana and to the cities, towns, and counties of the state for at least the next 16 years. Remember, you all have a 50-50 split. The state has a 50-50 split with local government, where 50% of that money goes directly to local government. It can't be working any better, I don't think, as the administrator of that fund. Frankly, we in the State House, I don't think, know as well as those on the ground in our counties about what they need in terms of opioid abatement, in terms of bettering their communities. And if we can get even more money to them, let them decide, not just one person here in the State House, let them decide what to do with it, I think it would have even more impact. But so far, so good with the 50-50 split. Licensing enforcement. Scott Barnhart, along with being in charge of the opioid settlement, is also the director of our Consumer Protection Division, and Amy Osborne is the section chief of licensing enforcement. They're both veterans. They continue to run a good, efficient ship, and from a consumer complaint perspective, it's led to nearly 5,000 licensing investigations in the last 2 years, and this team is actively litigating over 700 of those as we speak. So it's another high-volume practice that we have with some good results. Next. Big tech and data privacy. We've done some of this on our own, like, for example, TikTok. We sued TikTok and ByteDance, 2 lawsuits. One to protect children from the predatory nature of TikTok. Another lawsuit to protect protect adults and their data privacy. We originally had those lawsuits dismissed, and I was disappointed in those rulings. But we appealed those rulings. I don't speak for the court, not trying to here, but no one's ever saw a lawsuit like that where we literally sued, if not directly, indirectly, another country. Because, of course, TikTok is run by the CCP of China. And when we appealed those dismissals, they were overturned, and now we're back in court on those lawsuits. So we're definitely pursuing those, and we were the first state in the nation to do that, and other states are now doing the same. And then sometimes we join with other states, like in the Google settlement, $20 million settlement to the state of Indiana for wrongdoing that they did, abuse of its location tracking system. Protecting free speech and other First Amendment rights from big tech abuse will continue to be time-consuming and an expensive aspect of our litigation portfolio going forward. Robocalls. I know you hear about them. I hear about them. I know you get them. I get them. And I know you may not believe me when I tell you we are doing everything possible under the law and using the latest technology to keep up with it. It's like playing a game of whack-a-mole. And the technology really, at this point, I don't know if there's anything more that you can do from a legal perspective, from a change of law perspective. We'd like to keep an open dialogue there, and I certainly would appreciate any of your ideas. It's really a technological issue at this point. So we've done 2 major things. First of all, instead of sending subpoenas and whatnot to some of our largest carriers, we've asked them to partner with us. I don't think AT&T is the problem here, but to the extent the problem makers are using using big carrier technologies, using their hardware or software, whatever, or anything in between, we want the carriers to help us solve the problem. And they have agreed. And so far, so good. So that's what we're doing. In fact, Indiana, with the leadership and experience of Doug Swetnam, another attorney in our office who could be, hope he's not listening, could be making a lot more money in the private sector, is doing this work on behalf of the people of Indiana. He is sort of the dean of the robocall experience amongst attorneys general, and he is co-leading a task force with North Carolina and Ohio. Indiana's leading that task force to stay on top of this. We've also learned, of course, that if you combine forces with other states, you can get at these folks a lot more. And who are these folks? We may never be able to get the individual who's living overseas and actually making these phone calls. But if we can get, for example, the California company, like the 2 we just got recently, and find them because they aided and abetted this person, that we may not be able to get with the long arm of the law across seas, then we may be able to disincentivize all this enough. And it's working combined with the carrier's own technology that when it pops up potential spam call or potential robocall, we're hoping that the industry can help along the way as well. Data privacy and identity theft. Data privacy relates to all data an individual creates from search preferences in person or online purchases where a credit or bank card is used, travel activity, et cetera. A data breach occurs when an unauthorized person steals, copies, alters sensitive, protected, or confidential information. And identity theft occurs when an individual uses someone else's personal information to commit fraud or other crimes. So you see the breach is going up exponentially. You see our investigations, for the most part, mirroring that. We are stretched here, I would tell you, in our ability to keep up with the number of cases. Our homeowner protection unit, please let your constituents know that we may be able to help when it comes to an HOA. I hesitate saying that because of, you know as well as I do, all the drama that comes along with HOAs, and we can't solve all that drama. But in terms of waste, fraud, and abuse, in terms of lack of reporting and that kind of thing, we may be able to step in and lend a helping hand to one of your constituents. You can see the amount of money that in 2024, we obtained $718,000 in judgments, including $412,000 in consumer restitution. As Senator Nizgotsky knows, our small team is highly effective working with landlords like the owners of Cedar Glen to ensure tenants have heat before winter. So in addition to the HOAs, we also work on apartment complex issues. That authority we're using fairly creatively. We combine it sometimes with our nonprofit authority because sometimes there's out-of-state operators who set these apartments up as nonprofits in what we believe is a fraudulent manner. And so that's allowed us to get some restitution here for renters. But it's not perfect law. It's not a perfect authority necessarily for all cases. Senator Kodara, you were helpful in that regard as well. I appreciate that. Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. Like I said, we're known nationwide. We're funded by a 75% federal grant, so that takes a lot of pressure off you and us, and it's a 25-state grant match. It's required by federal regulations, and it's required that the Attorney General does this work. It's the only real original criminal jurisdiction that your Attorney General has. The rest is reserved completely to county prosecutors for all other crimes, and it's completely up to their discretion. And I mentioned Chief Counsel Matt Whitmire before. He's doing a great job. We've recovered thus far $4 million from Medicaid providers. I believe that's just this year, and $2 million from durable medical equipment vendors. We have nearly $900,000 in civil settlements from whistleblower suits. And our investigations unit has resulted in 72 convictions and 66 indictments with state and federal courts. So as we bring this towards an end here, I just want to show you the slide that means a lot to me because it represents a ton of work. It's the recap of everything I just said and didn't have time to say out of respect for your time. But basically, we're recovering for every dollar of ours that we spend, every dollar of our constituents that we spend, we're recovering for about 14. And so I would humbly suggest, out of respect, that with this flatline budget request, I don't think we're the problem. I'll let you be the decision makers there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions? Yes, Senator Nizgotsky.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Attorney General Rikita, I do want to mention the Cedar Glen Apartments, and I do want to say thank you for your assistance with how you helped Representative Bauer and I. That is just one place, and we know there's many other problems that are out there. We're not trying to hurt any landlords that are doing the right thing, but we're trying to hold the feet to the fire, the ones that are taking advantage. And I know this can't be the whole answer, but I do think it helps when you see that the state's Attorney General is assisting, and I think that sends a very strong message that we should just all try to treat people fairly. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right, and thank you for that. And I don't know where we're going next with it in terms of who's going to complain tomorrow. We can't be everywhere, so we have to selectively take the best cases, quite honestly, Senator. And I'm for landlords. I'm for people paying their rent. But once that person pays their rent, or we, the taxpayers, pay the rent on their behalf, then they have to provide, and they have to provide the basics. And you highlighted, along with Representative Bauer, and the trustee up there as well. You presented a case where the landlord wasn't performing basic services, and that's not right.
Representative Delaney?
Thank you, General. It's been a while. First, I am standing ready to help you if you need to strengthen our legislation about landlord abuses of tenants. It's a complex subject. I do not stand as ready to help you on homeowners associations because I agree with you that there may not be a bigger hornet's nest in Indiana than that concept. I have a fundamental question for you. I need to sort out who your client is. I look at your correspondence and you talk about how you support Indiana's values, and you've sued the federal government over and over about the border, about elections, about the environment, about coal. Who gives you direction? Who calls you up and says, I need this lawsuit brought?
Well, I think ultimately as an elected Attorney General, I'm elected by the people of the state. And with that, I'm given discretion and authority through that electoral process. Two, you are a client. The client is the people of the state of Indiana, and specifically the government of the state of Indiana. And there are subunits of that client. You're a subunit as a legislator and as a legislative body. And there are things I do for you as your attorney, like defend the constitutionality of your laws in court. The agencies are a subunit of a larger client. Again, the government of the state of Indiana and the state of Indiana itself. I think the best way the way I look at my client-attorney relationship is I am the legal voice for the state of Indiana. I am not the governor. I am not the economic development voice for the state of Indiana. I'm not the overarching executive branch voice for the state of Indiana, but I am, as elected, the legal voice for the state of Indiana.
Do you in fact confer with the governor's office before, for example, suing about the border or suing about coal or those other litigation you brought? Do you confer with the governor's office, or do you just act on your own?
No, we confer with the governor's office all the time. We have
on these issues, though. I'm looking at the things you sued about. The abuses of big tech, campus protests, various multi-state letters about liquid natural gas that you wrote to President Biden.
I think
Does the governor get any role in this, or is this just done by your office?
No, we're conferring with them on, it's either a weekly or bi-weekly basis on the highest staff levels, the people that I've mentioned, in constant contact. Do the governor himself and I talk about these issues every week? No.
Would you oppose litigation that would require the governor's office to approve these cause cases that you bring, these issue cases that you bring, as opposed to where you're a defendant, as opposed to where you're defending our state laws or constitution, but where you decide to involve yourself in our state in these fights? Would you like the governor to help you?
I don't think it's fair to characterize it as I go with myself into these fights. I think.
Well, who's with you?
Who's not with me?
Well, I'm not with you. There's one.
Yeah, well, there's one person.
Now, I guarantee you I'm not alone.
Well,
Okay.
I don't, if you look at vote totals, you're in the minority.
So that, you think the voters chose that you should sue about the Texas border or whether President Trump should be on the ballot in Colorado and on and on and on?
The voters of this state are, by definition, correct.
Okay,
And
let's
so
ask this question, okay?
and
You,
so-
you obviously would not appreciate or support a law that would
I'll
limit.
tell you this, Senator Delaney.
Representative.
Excuse me, Representative Delaney. I don't want to give you a promotion you didn't get by the
I'm
people of
happy where
Indiana.
I'm happy where I am.
You said, would I oppose litigation? I think you meant, would I oppose legislation?
Yes.
Yes, because as the legal voice of the state of Indiana, put here by the people of the state of Indiana, this is the role of the Attorney General.
I don't
So
see that
that's
you're
a
being
question
supported by it,
asked,
but-
question answered.
Well, let's ask this question. What has the cost under your part, under Solicitor General, your part in your report on Policy Division, what's the cost of your multi-state litigation around the country on these various causes? What's that cost in your budget?
It depends on the case.
Right.
I can add all that up for you and get you a number, but many of these cases, I think almost the majority of them, to the extent that, again, we're defending the laws that you pass in one form.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about a law that we passed that you're defending because somebody attacked it. I'm talking about where you're bringing a lawsuit for some cause you believe in. That's what I'm talking
I
about. What's
don't
that
thi-
costing
But
us?
I think that cause in the end is either related to a policy interest of the state of Indiana, a direct statutory interest of the state of Indiana, or it's, and that's the majority of the cases. In terms of the cost, most of the time, if we're not doing it ourselves, we're doing it on a contingency fee arrangement, so there is no cost
Do
to
you
the
get
state.
financial support from outside groups, lobby groups, advocacy groups for your brief writing?
Not that I know of.
Not that you know, okay. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. How much less will you spend on these efforts when Trump becomes the president again?
That's a good question.
I think it's a big number. Do you have any idea what that number would be?
How much less I would spend?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the answer. It's a good question. I don't know the answer. I think time will tell because the deep state is very deep. And there could be bureaucrats threatening the sovereignty of Indiana for years to come, even though there's a change in presidency.
So the deep state may survive the election of President Trump. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I don't know the answer to your question.
And they may, and they may continue to interfere with our policies, in your view. Is that fair?
They could. I don't know the answer to that question.
So you don't know how much it's going to save us if you stop suing the White House and the federal government?
Well, it'll be the same. It'll be the same metric that we go through no matter who's president. And that is the sovereignty of the state and the laws that you pass threatened.
And you're the judge of that. Sorry, nobody else is, in my view. You are the judge. You announce it. Let me ask you, do you ever lobby on bills that are before the General Assembly?
Oh, yeah, we have.
No, you
there's certain-
personally.
Do I personally lobby?
Yeah.
No, I give you your space to do your work.
Did you lobby on the issue of driver's licenses for people who are on parole status from foreign countries? Did you talk to the legislature about that?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? You don't remember saying that you didn't support that idea?
I don't support that idea.
No, you remember telling the legislators that privately that you didn't support that?
Well, legislators come and talk to me about legislation all the time. I do remember legislators coming to talk to me privately about that.
And on that, you recommended that we trim it back from multiple countries so that only the Ukrainians got that permit. Is that right?
I don't remember anything.
You don't remember that?
No.
Okay. And we're in court, we're in litigation in the federal court right now over the changes in our law as to parolee status drivers. Am I right?
I believe so, yep.
And how much is that costing us?
I don't know off the top of my head. Are you insinuating that the advice that me or my office gave caused us to be in litigation?
Yeah. How about that? I am not insinuating that, sir. I'm stating that.
Okay.
You intervened
Appreciate
in
your
our
opinion.
legislative process. You came up with a law that's clearly unconstitutional, discriminatory, harsh on our Ukrainian friends, among other people, and now we're in federal court repeatedly. Yeah. So I'm holding you for that. Yeah. There are others, but I'll stop with that one.
Okay, well, I appreciate your opinion. I think you're wrong.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Senator Kador?
Being here, I wanted to compliment your homeowners protection unit. In my district, Senate District 30, in 2021, JPC Foundation from New Jersey abused Lakeside Point apartment complex residents. And subsequent to that event, there were 3 additional properties in Indianapolis that you worked with the city of Indianapolis on filing a lawsuit. And every week, every couple of weeks, I continue to receive complaints from tenants because I introduced legislation on this for the 2 past years, and I intend to do the same for this upcoming session. I became a voice for protecting people, and I intend to introduce 2 pieces of legislation next session. One that deals with out-of-country and out-of-state investors without violating the Commerce Clause by coming up with some kind of nexus to out-of-state landlords investing in Indiana. And the second is the habitability standard as it relates to people living in our state. Again, we protect responsible landlords and responsible tenants, but I urge you in your office to continue investing in that space. This is a nonpartisan space that impacts everyone. It doesn't have an R or a D on top of it. I think that I might not be using the legal term here, but as you said, if someone is paying rent, they are paying their property taxes through their rent payments. That's how it works because the apartment complex pays property taxes and the tenants pay property taxes that is built in that rental payments. So when they are not receiving the benefits of that payment, to me, that's a breach of contract, and people have to be held accountable. So I appreciate your work on that space. I think this is a great opportunity for bipartisan work on something that most of us agree on, and I would urge you to continue to invest in that space.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none?
It's a party.
Thank you for your
Thank
presentation.
you very much. I
Very good.
appreciate it. Thank you all.
Well, members of committee, I believe that's the end of today's agenda. If I'm not mistaken, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. Is that correct? Okay. And I ask that you be at the evening event by 6 o'clock, even a little before, so we can, people at my age, we like to get it done and not be out too late, so. And so with.
You eat at 4 o'clock, right?
Yeah, 4 o'clock, yeah. And so with that, we'll stand adjourned for the day, and we'll see you tomorrow.